The town of Ashford didn't believe in second chances. It believed in dust, in whiskey, in the sharp crack of a rifle at dawn. It believed in the word of Judge Amos Wickham, whose decisions were as final as the nails driven into coffin lids. And on this particular Tuesday morning, it believed that Rafe Calder deserved to hang. The gallows stood in the center of the square, a crooked monument to frontier justice. Rafe had been standing there for 20 minutes, long enough for the sun to burn the back of his neck and for the crowd to settle into a comfortable anticipation. He wasn't the first man to die here. Wouldn't be the last. He didn't look like a killer. That's what people whispered. Too young, maybe. Too lean. His hair fell across his eyes in a way that made him look lost rather than dangerous. But the evidence had been clear, or clear enough for Judge Wickham. A man named Samuel Greer had been found dead in his own cabin, throat cut, and Rafe had been seen leaving the area that same night. Blood on his coat. No alibi. Case closed. Any last words? The executioner asked, more out of habit than interest. Rafe looked out at the crowd. Faces blurred together. Some he recognized. The blacksmith who'd once lent him a horse, the woman who ran the general store, the banker who'd refused him credit. None of them met his eyes. "I didn't kill him," Rafe said. His voice was quiet, almost swallowed by the wind. Someone in the crowd laughed. A child asked his mother what was taking so long. Judge Wickham stood on the platform beside the gallows, hands clasped behind his back. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with a face carved from granite and a voice that could silence a room. He'd been the law in Ashford for 15 years, and in that time he'd built a reputation for firmness. Some called it cruelty. He called it order. "Justice is served," Wickham said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Let this be a lesson." The executioner reached for the lever, and that's when Mara Vance spoke. "I'll buy him." The words didn't make sense at first. People turned, confused, looking for the source. Then they saw her, a woman standing at the edge of the crowd, half hidden behind the blacksmith's cart. She was maybe 30, maybe older. Hard to tell. Life in Ashford aged people fast. She wore a plain brown dress, patched at the elbows, and her hair was pulled back in a bun so tight it looked painful. Mara Vance, the woman who ran the Dying General store on the corner of 5th and Main, the one everyone passed without thinking, the one whose shelves were always half empty, whose accounts were always in the red. "What did you say?" Judge Wickham's voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. Mara stepped forward. Her hands were shaking, but she kept them steady by gripping the ledger book tighter. "I said I'll buy him, his life. Under the Frontier Clemency Act of 1867, I have the right to purchase his bond and take responsibility for his debts and crimes." The crowd erupted. Some laughed outright. Others stared, mouths open. The Frontier Clemency Act was real. An old law, barely used, designed to prevent hangings when labor was scarce. A person could buy a condemned prisoner's life, take them into indentured service, and bear full legal responsibility for their actions. If the prisoner ran, the buyer faced the same punishment. If the prisoner killed again, the buyer swung beside them. It was madness. "You can't be serious," someone shouted. "She's lost her mind," another said. Judge Wickham descended from the platform slowly, deliberately. He stopped a few feet from Mara, studying her like she was something unpleasant he'd found on the bottom of his boot. "Miss Vance," he said, his tone almost kind, "do you understand what you're proposing?" "I do." "This man is a murderer." "You say he's a murderer. He says he's innocent. Either way, the law allows for clemency purchase. I'm invoking it." Wickham's jaw tightened. "You'd stake your life on him?" "I'm staking my business, my property, my bond. That's what the law requires." "And if he kills you in your sleep?" Mara's voice didn't waver. "Then I suppose you'll get to hang him after all." A few people in the crowd chuckled nervously. Wickham didn't. He turned to the executioner. "Is this legal?" The executioner, a squat man named Dalton, scratched his beard. "Technically, yeah. Long as she's got the bond money and signs the papers. Ain't seen it done in maybe 10 years, but it's on the books." Wickham's eyes narrowed. "And you have the money, Miss Vance." Mara reached into her satchel and pulled out a small pouch. She opened it, showing the glint of coins inside. $300. It's everything I have. It's enough. It was enough. Barely. The law required a bond equal to the condemned's estimated worth as a laborer. For a man like Rafe, who had no land, no family, no standing, 300 was the minimum. Wickham stared at the pouch for a long moment. Then he looked back at Mara. Why? It was the question everyone wanted answered. Why would a woman with nothing risk everything on a stranger? Why would she tie her fate to a man accused of murder? Mara met his gaze. Because I don't think he did it. The crowd went silent. That's not your decision to make, Wickham said. No, but buying his bond is. Wickham could have refused. He could have found a technicality, a loophole, some way to block her. But there were too many witnesses, too many people watching. And the law, however old and dusty, was clear. He turned to Dalton. Draw up the papers. It took an hour to process everything. Mara signed document after document, her hand cramping by the end. Rafe was brought down from the gallows, still bound, still silent. He didn't look at her, didn't say a word. When it was done, Dalton unlocked the ropes and handed Rafe over like a piece of livestock. He's yours now. Anything he does, it's on you. Mara nodded. She turned to Rafe. Can you walk? He nodded. Then let's go. They walked through the square together, Mara in front, Rafe a few steps behind. The crowd parted, but not in respect, in disbelief, in scorn. She'll be dead in a week, someone muttered. Stupid woman. Probably in love with him. Pathetic. Mara kept her eyes forward. She didn't respond, didn't defend herself. She'd learned a long time ago that words meant nothing in Ashford. Only actions mattered. Her store was a 10-minute walk from the square, tucked between a shuttered saloon and a boarding house that smelled like mildew. The sign above the door read, Vance General Goods, though half the letters had faded. Inside, the shelves were sparse, cans of beans, a few bolts of fabric, some rusted tools. Dust coated everything. Mara led Rafe inside and locked the door behind them. Then she turned and looked at him properly for the first time. He was taller than she'd thought, lean but not weak. His face was bruised. Someone had hit him recently, probably in the jail. His eyes were dark, wary, like an animal that had been cornered too many times. Sit, she said, pointing to a stool near the counter. Rafe sat. He didn't ask questions, didn't thank her, just sat. Mara pulled a tin cup from the shelf and filled it with water from a pitcher. She handed it to him. Drink. He drank. His hands were steady, but she noticed the way his fingers gripped the cup. Tight, like he was afraid it might disappear. Why'd you do that? He asked finally. His voice was rougher than she'd expected, scratched raw from days in a cell. Because I don't think you killed Samuel Greer. You don't know me. No, but I knew Sam, and I know Judge Wickham. Rafe's eyes sharpened. What's that supposed to mean? Mara set her ledger book on the counter. It means I've been watching this town for a long time, and I've seen the way things work. Sam Greer was about to testify against Wickham in a land dispute. 3 days later, he's dead, and you're blamed. Convenient. Rafe stared at her. You think the judge set me up? I think it's possible. I think someone wanted Sam dead, and you were an easy target. No family, no money, no voice. Perfect scapegoat. That's a hell of a theory. It's more than a theory, but I can't prove it. Not yet. And what am I supposed to do? Just sit here while you play detective? Mara's jaw tightened. You're supposed to stay alive. That's the deal. You work for me, you keep your head down, and we figure out what really happened. If I'm wrong, you serve out your bond and walk away. If I'm right, we clear your name. And if Wickham finds out what you're doing, then we're both in trouble. Rafe laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. You're insane. Maybe, but you're still breathing. So I must be doing something right. That night, Mara lay awake in the small room above the store, staring at the ceiling. She could hear Rafe moving around downstairs, pacing, probably. She didn't blame him. He'd gone from a noose to a stranger's charity in the span of an hour. Trust would take time, if they had time. She thought about the faces in the crowd, the way they'd looked at her, not with pity, but with contempt. She'd crossed a line today, challenged the order of things. And in a town like Ashford, that was dangerous. but she'd meant what she said. She didn't think Rafe was a killer. She'd seen killers before. Her father had been one, a drunk who'd beaten her mother to death when Mara was 12. She knew what violence looked like in a man's eyes, and Rafe didn't have it. He had something else, something broken. She'd seen that too. Downstairs, Rafe sat on the floor, back against the wall, staring at the darkened store. His wrists still ached from the ropes. His neck still felt the phantom weight of the noose. He didn't know why Mara Vance had saved him, didn't trust it. People didn't do things for free. There was always a cost. But for now, he was alive. And that was enough. The next morning, the trouble started. Mara opened the store at dawn, same as always. She swept the floor, dusted the shelves, lit the lamps. Rafe stayed in the back, out of sight, organizing crates. She'd told him to keep quiet, to avoid being seen. The fewer people who saw him, the better. By mid-morning, she'd had 3 customers. All 3 left without buying anything. The first was Mrs. Halloran, a regular who bought flour every week. She walked in, saw Mara, and walked out without a word. The second was Tom Brennan, the butcher. He came in, looked around, then said, "Heard you made a fool of yourself yesterday." "Just doing business," Mara replied evenly. "Business." Tom snorted. "You bought a murderer. That ain't business. That's stupidity." "Is there something you need, Tom?" "Yeah, a shopkeeper with sense." He left. The third was a young woman Mara didn't recognize. She came in, glanced nervously toward the back room, then hurried out. By noon, the store was empty. Mara stood behind the counter, hands flat on the wood, breathing slowly. She'd expected this, knew it was coming, but expecting something and living through it were different things. "They're not coming back, are they?" She turned. Rafe stood in the doorway to the back room, arms crossed. "Not today," Mara said. "Not ever." "We'll see." Rafe stepped closer. "You're going to lose everything because of me." "I was losing everything anyway. At least now I have a chance to fight back." "Against what? The whole town?" "If that's what it takes." Rafe shook his head. "You really are insane." Mara almost smiled. "You keep saying that. Maybe you're right." That afternoon, Judge Wickham paid her a visit. He didn't knock, just walked in like he owned the place. Maybe he did. Half the buildings in Ashford had his name on the deed somewhere. "Miss Vance," he said, removing his hat, "I thought we should talk." Mara straightened. "About what?" "About your decision yesterday. I'm concerned." "I'm sure you are." Wickham's smile didn't reach his eyes. "This town depends on order, on trust. When someone breaks that trust, it creates instability. I haven't broken any laws." "No, but you've made people uncomfortable. They're questioning things, questioning me. That's dangerous." "Maybe they should question you." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Wickham's smile faded. "Be careful, Miss Vance. You're playing a game you don't understand." "I understand enough." "Do you?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You think you're protecting him, but all you've done is paint a target on your back. People in this town listen to me, and if I say you're a problem, then what? You'll hang me too?" "I won't have to. You'll destroy yourself." He put his hat back on and walked to the door. Then he paused. "That man you bought? He's guilty. And when he proves it, when he hurts someone or kills them, you'll hang beside him. Remember that." He left. Mara stood there, heart pounding, hands trembling. She wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, but she didn't. She just stood there, breathing until the shaking stopped. Rafe appeared in the doorway. "You all right?" "No?" "What'd he say?" "That I'm going to regret this." "You probably will." Mara looked at him. "You think you did it? Killed Sam Greer?" Rafe hesitated. "I don't remember." "What do you mean you don't remember?" "I mean, I was drunk. I'd been drinking for 2 days straight. I woke up in the woods with blood on my coat and no idea how it got there. Next thing I know, they're dragging me to jail." Mara's stomach sank. "So you might have done it." "I might have. I don't know." She wanted to be angry, wanted to feel betrayed, but all she felt was tired. "Then we need to find out," she said. "How?" "By doing what Wickham doesn't want us to do. We investigate." But they started that night. Mara closed the store early and led Rafe through the back alleys of Ashford, avoiding the main streets. They moved quickly, quietly, until they reached the edge of town where Samuel Greer's cabin still stood. It was a small place, one room, with a sagging porch and broken windows. The door hung open, creaking in the wind. Inside, the floor was stained dark, blood long dried. Mara stepped inside first, holding a lantern. Rafe followed. "What are we looking for?" he asked. "Anything that doesn't fit the story." They searched in silence. Mara checked the corners, the shelves, the bed. Rafe examined the walls, the floorboards. "Here," Rafe said suddenly. Mara turned. He was crouched near the door, holding something small. A button. "It's not mine," he said, "and it's too fine for Sam. Look at the stitching." Mara took it, holding it up to the light. He was right. It was expensive, the kind of button you'd find on a gentleman's coat, not a laborer's. "Someone else was here," she said. "Yeah, someone with money." They kept searching, found a second button near the back window, and then tucked under the bed a piece of paper, crumpled, torn, but still legible. Mara smoothed it out. It was a contract, a land deed, Sam Greer's signature at the bottom, and another name at the top. Amos Wickham. Rafe leaned over her shoulder. "That's the judge." "Yeah. What's it say?" Mara read slowly. "It's a transfer of property. Sam was selling his land to Wickham. But look at the date. It's from 3 weeks ago. And there's a clause here, pending witness testimony in the matter of disputed claims. Sam was going to testify." "Yeah. And Wickham needed him quiet." They stared at each other. "This doesn't prove anything," Rafe said finally. "Not in court." "No, but it's a start." They left the cabin and headed back toward town, moving carefully through the shadows. They were halfway there when they heard voices. Mara froze. Rafe grabbed her arm, pulling her into the doorway of an abandoned building. 2 men walked past, talking in low tones. One of them was Dalton, the executioner. The other was a man Mara didn't recognize, thin, nervous, with a scar across his cheek. "Shouldn't have left those buttons," the scarred man was saying. "Relax. No one's looking. The case is closed." "What if someone does look?" "Then we deal with it. Same way we dealt with Greer." They passed out of earshot. Mara's heart was racing. Rafe's grip on her arm tightened. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. "Yeah. They killed him. Wickham's men. We need to get out of here." They ran. Back at the store, Mara locked the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. Rafe paced the room, hands in his hair. "We're dead," he said. "You know that, right? If Wickham finds out we were snooping, he won't." "You don't know that." "No, but we can't stop now. We have evidence. We have a witness, that scarred man. If we can find him, make him talk. He'll kill us before he talks." "Maybe. Or maybe he's scared enough of Wickham to flip." Rafe stopped pacing. "You're serious? You actually think we can win this?" "I think we have to try." He laughed, harsh, disbelieving. "You're crazier than I thought." "Probably." They stood there staring at each other, 2 people who had nothing, risking everything, on a plan that would probably get them killed. "All right," Rafe said finally. "What's the next move?" Mara pulled out the crumpled contract. "We find out who else knows about this, and we make them talk." The days that followed were a blur of whispered conversations, late-night searches, and mounting danger. Mara and Rafe worked together, slowly piecing together the puzzle. They learned that the scarred man's name was Pike. He worked for Wickham, doing his dirty work, collecting debts, intimidating witnesses, and apparently committing murder. They learned that Sam Greer had been planning to testify not just about the land deal, but about other shady transactions Wickham had orchestrated. Sam had kept records, detailed records, and those records were missing. "Wickham must have them," Mara said one night, sitting at the counter with Rafe. "Or he destroyed them." "Or someone else has them," Rafe suggested. "Who?" "Sam's brother, Caleb. He lives about 20 miles south. If Sam was smart, he would have given the records to someone he trusted." Mara nodded slowly. "Then we need to talk to Caleb. That's a long ride, and Wickham's probably watching us." Then We'll have to be careful. They left before dawn, taking Mara's old wagon and a horse that looked like it might collapse at any moment. The ride was long, uncomfortable, and tense. Every time they passed another traveler, Mara's heart jumped, but no one stopped them. Caleb Greer lived in a small farmhouse surrounded by scrubland. He was older than Sam had been, with a weathered face and suspicious eyes. He didn't invite them in. "What do you want?" he asked, standing in the doorway with a rifle in his hands. "I'm Mara Vance. This is Rafe Calder. We're looking into your brother's death." Caleb's expression darkened. The law already handled that, hanged the man responsible. "They tried to," Mara said, "but I don't think he did it. I think your brother was murdered by Judge Wickham's men, and I think you know it too." Caleb was silent for a long moment. Then he lowered the rifle. "Come inside." Inside, Caleb poured them weak coffee and sat across from them at a scarred wooden table. "Sam knew he was in danger," Caleb said. "He told me Wickham was threatening him, trying to force him to sell his land cheap. When Sam refused, things got ugly." "Did Sam have proof?" Mara asked. Caleb nodded slowly. He stood, walked to a cabinet, and pulled out a small metal box. He set it on the table and opened it. Inside were papers, contracts, ledgers, letters, all of them documenting Wickham's corruption, land grabs, bribery, extortion. "Sam gave me these 2 weeks before he died," Caleb said. "Told me if anything happened to him, I should take them to the territorial governor, but I was scared. Wickham's powerful. I didn't think anyone would believe me." Mara's hands shook as she flipped through the papers. "This is everything. This proves Wickham's guilty." "It proves he's corrupt," Caleb said, "but it doesn't prove he killed Sam." "No, but it gives us leverage." Rafe leaned forward. "We need to take this public, force Wickham to answer for it." Caleb shook his head. "You do that, you'll both end up dead, just like Sam." "Maybe," Mara said, "but if we don't try, Wickham wins, and more people die." Caleb looked at her for a long time. Then he pushed the box toward her. "Take it. Do what you think is right, but be careful. Wickham doesn't lose quietly." They rode back to Ashford in silence, the metal box hidden under a tarp in the wagon. Mara's mind raced. They had the evidence, but how to use it? If they went to the sheriff, Wickham would bury it. If they went to the governor, Wickham would know before the letter arrived. They needed something bigger, something public. "We call a town meeting," Rafe said suddenly. Mara looked at him. "What?" "We call a meeting, present the evidence in front of everyone, force Wickham to defend himself in the open." "That's insane. He'll never let it happen." "He won't have a choice, not if enough people show up. Not if we make it public enough that he can't shut it down without looking guilty." Mara considered. It was risky, probably suicidal, but it might work. "All right," she said. "Let's do it." They spent the next 3 days spreading the word. Mara talked to everyone who would listen, shopkeepers, farmers, laborers. Rafe printed flyers and posted them around town. The message was simple. Town meeting. Saturday. Come hear the truth about Samuel Greer's murder. By Friday night, the whole town was buzzing. Some people were curious, others were angry, and Judge Wickham was furious. He came to Mara's store that evening, slamming the door open so hard it rattled the windows. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he shouted. Mara stood behind the counter, calm. "Exercising my right to free assembly." "You're inciting unrest." "I'm asking questions. If you don't like the questions, maybe you shouldn't have lied about the answers." Wickham's face turned red. He stepped closer, looming over her. "You have no idea what you're meddling with." "I have a pretty good idea. Cancel the meeting." "No." "I'm warning you, sir. Warn all you want. The meeting's happening." Wickham stared at her, jaw clenched. Then he turned and stormed out. Rafe emerged from the back room. "He's going to try to stop us." "I know." "We need to be ready." "I know." Taz. Saturday arrived cold and gray. Mara woke early, dressed carefully, and packed the metal box into a satchel. Rafe was already downstairs, checking the locks on the doors. "You ready?" he asked. "No, but let's go anyway." They walked to the town hall together. A crowd had already gathered, maybe 50 people, maybe more. Some looked curious. Others looked hostile. Mara spotted Wickham near the front, arms crossed, flanked by Dalton and Pike. She took a deep breath and stepped onto the small stage at the front of the hall. "Thank you for coming," she began. Her voice shook slightly, but she pushed through. "I know many of you think I'm crazy. Maybe I am, but I'm also right." She opened the satchel and pulled out the documents. "These papers belong to Samuel Greer. They prove that Judge Wickham has been using his position to steal land, extort money, and silence anyone who stands in his way. And I know that he had Sam Greer killed to keep him quiet." The crowd erupted. Some people shouted in disbelief. Others demanded to see the proof. Wickham stepped forward, face dark. "This is slander," he said. "Lies from a desperate woman." "Then explain these," Mara said, holding up the contracts. "Explain why your name is on every one of these fraudulent deals. Explain why Sam was planning to testify against you days before he died." "I don't have to explain anything to you." "No, but you do have to explain it to them." She pointed to the crowd. "These people deserve the truth." Wickham's jaw tightened. He turned to Dalton. "Arrest her." Dalton hesitated. "On what charge?" "Disturbing the peace, defamation. I don't care. Get her out of here." But before Dalton could move, a voice rang out from the back of the hall. "I'll testify." Everyone turned. A man stepped forward, thin, nervous, with a scar across his cheek. Pike. "I'll tell them what happened," Pike said, his voice shaking. "I'll tell them everything." Wickham's face went white. And in that moment, Mara knew they'd won. Pike's confession hung in the air like smoke from a gun barrel. The town hall went dead silent. Even the wind outside seemed to hold its breath. Wickham stood frozen, his face drained of color, mouth half open like he'd been punched in the gut. Dalton took a step back, hand falling away from his gun belt. "What did you say?" Wickham's voice came out strangled, barely above a whisper. Pike wiped his palms on his pants. His scar seemed to pulse in the lamplight. "I said I'll testify. About Sam Greer. About what really happened that night." "You don't know what you're doing," Wickham said, recovering slightly. His voice hardened. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe. But I'm done carrying your weight." Pike looked at Mara. "I was there the night Sam died. I can tell you everything." The crowd erupted again. People shouted questions, accusations, demands. Mara gripped the edge of the stage, trying to keep her hands from shaking. This was it. This was the break they needed. Wickham's eyes darted around the room, calculating. Then he laughed, a sharp, humorless sound that cut through the noise. "You'll believe the word of a criminal? A man who's been in and out of jail more times than he can count? Better than believing a man who's been lining his pockets with stolen land," someone shouted from the crowd. "Show us the papers," another voice called. Mara held up the metal box. "It's all here. Contracts, ledgers, witness statements. Judge Wickham has been using his position to force people off their land. Sam Greer was going to expose him. And 3 days before he could testify, he was murdered." "By him!" A woman pointed at Rafe. "That's the man who killed Sam!" Rafe stepped forward, his jaw tight. "I was set up. I woke up covered in blood with no memory of how it got there. But I didn't kill Sam Greer. I was drinking in the woods that night, passed out drunk. Someone put that blood on me. Someone wanted me to hang for it." "Convenient story," Wickham said. "Is it?" Mara's voice cut through sharp and clear. "Or is it convenient that the only witness against Rafe was a coat covered in blood? No murder weapon, no actual witnesses, just a drunk man in the wrong place at the wrong time." Pike cleared his throat. "The blood wasn't Sam's." Every head turned toward him. "What?" Mara asked. "The blood on his coat. It wasn't Sam's. It was from a deer. We killed a deer that afternoon, butchered it near where Rafe was sleeping off the whiskey. Got blood everywhere. When we found Rafe passed out, we took his coat, put more blood on it, and threw it back on him." "We?" Rafe's voice was dangerously quiet. Pike glanced at Dalton. "Me and him. Wickham's orders." Dalton's hand moved toward his gun, but 3 men in the crowd stepped forward, blocking him. The blacksmith, the livery owner, and Tom Brennan the butcher. All big men, all watching Dalton like he was a rabid dog. "Don't," the blacksmith said simply. Dalton's hand froze. Wickham's composure was cracking. Mara could see it in the way his shoulders tensed, the way his fingers curled into fists. This is absurd. You're taking the word of a known liar over an elected official. I've served this town for 15 years. Served yourself, you mean, someone muttered. I demand proof. Real proof. Not hearsay from a criminal. Mara pulled out the contracts and held them high. Here's your proof. Your signature on every one of these fraudulent land transfers. Your handwriting on letters threatening Sam Greer. Your name on bribes paid to silence witnesses. She stepped down from the stage and walked toward Wickham, holding the papers out. You want proof? Look at it. Wickham didn't take them. His eyes flicked to the exits, to Dalton, to Pike. Trapped. Who else was involved? Mara pressed. Who else helped you murder Sam Greer? Pike spoke again, quieter now. Just us three. Me, Dalton, and Wickham. We went to Sam's cabin that night. Wickham said we were just going to scare him, make him sign the land over. But Sam refused, started yelling, said he'd go to the governor, the newspapers, anyone who'd listen. So you killed him, Rafe said flatly. Dalton did. Cut his throat while I held him down. Wickham watched. A woman in the crowd gasped. Another started crying. Men who'd worked for Wickham, who'd voted for him, who'd trusted him, stared like they were seeing a stranger. Wickham's voice went cold. You have no authority here, Miss Vance. This isn't a court. These aren't legal proceedings. You're just stirring up a mob. Then let's make it official, Mara said. Let's take this to the territorial governor. Let a real court decide. The governor is 3 weeks away by messenger. You think people will wait that long? You think they won't forget? I think they won't forget a man who murdered one of their own. Wickham's mask finally slipped. Rage flashed across his face, raw and ugly. You stupid woman. You have no idea what you've done. This town needs order. Needs someone strong enough to make hard decisions. Sam Greer was a drunk and a fool. He would have ruined everything I built here. You built this on blood and lies, Mara shot back. I built this on necessity, Wickham roared. You think this town survived on kindness, on fairness? No. It survived because I did what needed to be done, because I wasn't afraid to get my hands dirty. The crowd was silent again, but this silence was different, colder. The blacksmith spoke, his voice low and rough. You killed Sam because he stood up to you. I killed Sam because he was weak, just like all of you are weak, too scared to do what's necessary. That's enough. The sheriff finally stepped forward, an older man named Garrett, who'd been standing in the back, watching. He'd always been in Wickham's pocket. Everyone knew it. But now he looked sick, pale. Judge Wickham, I'm placing you under arrest for the murder of Samuel Greer. Wickham laughed. You? Arrest me? You don't have the spine. Maybe not, but I've got the badge, and I've got a town full of witnesses. Garrett's hand went to his gun. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. For a moment, Mara thought Wickham might actually comply. Might go quietly. But then his hand shot out, grabbing her wrist and yanking her toward him. She stumbled, the metal box clattering to the floor. Papers scattered everywhere. Wickham pulled a pistol from inside his coat and pressed it against Mara's temple. Nobody moves, he said. Rafe lunged forward, but Dalton drew his gun, pointing it at Rafe's chest. Stay back! The blacksmith and the others froze. Garrett's hand hovered over his holster, uncertain. Wickham backed toward the door, dragging Mara with him. She could feel the cold metal of the gun barrel against her skin, could smell the sweat on Wickham's coat. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Let her go, Rafe said. His voice was steady, but his eyes were wild. Not a chance. She's my way out of here. There is no way out, Garrett said, but the whole town knows what you did. Then I guess she's coming with me. Wickham pulled Mara closer, the gun pressing harder. Anyone follows me, I'll kill her. Anyone tries to stop me, I'll kill her. You all understand? Mara's mind raced. She could feel the panic rising, threatening to choke her. But underneath it was something else. Anger, cold, sharp anger. She'd risked everything to get here, bought a man's life, challenged the most powerful person in town, stood up when everyone else sat down. She wasn't about to die like this. Her hand found the small knife she kept in her pocket, a tiny blade she used for cutting twine in the store. Not much, but enough. Wickham was still talking, still threatening, his attention split between the crowd and the door. Mara waited, counted her breaths. 1, 2, 3. Then she twisted, hard and fast, driving the little knife into Wickham's hand. He screamed, the gun jerking away from her head. Mara threw herself sideways, hitting the floor as the pistol went off. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space, the bullet punching through the ceiling. Rafe was on Wickham in a heartbeat, tackling him to the ground. The two men grappled, rolling across the scattered papers. Rafe's fist connected with Wickham's jaw, once, twice, 3 times. Blood spattered across the floorboards. Dalton swung his gun toward Rafe, but the blacksmith was faster. He grabbed a chair and smashed it across Dalton's back. The executioner went down hard, his gun skittering away. Pike didn't move, just stood there, hands raised, looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Garrett and 2 other men finally rushed forward, pulling Rafe off Wickham. The judge's face was a mess, split lip, broken nose, one eye already swelling shut. He spat blood and tried to stand, but his legs gave out. "Get him up," Garrett said. "Lock him in the jail." They dragged Wickham to his feet. He didn't fight, just stared at Mara with pure hatred. "This isn't over," he said, blood bubbling between his teeth. Mara stood, brushing dust off her dress. Her hands were shaking again, but she kept her voice level. "Yeah, it is." They took Wickham out, Dalton too. Pike went willingly, head down, shoulders hunched. The crowd slowly dispersed, people talking in low, shocked voices. Some looked at Mara with something like respect, others with fear, a few with disgust. Rafe stayed. He picked up the scattered papers, stacking them carefully back into the metal box. His knuckles were split and bleeding. "You all right?" he asked. Mara nodded. She didn't trust her voice yet. "That was stupid," he said. "Stabbing him like that? He could have killed you." He was going to anyway. Maybe, but still stupid. She almost laughed. Almost. "Yeah, probably." They stood there in the empty hall, surrounded by overturned chairs and scattered documents and the smell of gunpowder. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows through the windows. "What happens now?" Rafe asked. "I don't know. We wait for the governor's people to arrive, I guess. Make sure Wickham actually faces trial." "You think they'll convict him? With Pike's testimony? The documents?" "Yeah, I think they will." Rafe was quiet for a moment. "You saved my life. Twice now. You tackled a man who had a gun. I'd say we're even. Still, thank you." Mara met his eyes. For the first time since she'd bought him off that gallows, he looked at her without suspicion, without walls. "You're welcome," she said. The next few days were chaos. Word spread fast. By Sunday morning, everyone in Ashford knew what had happened. Some people came to Mara's store to congratulate her. Others came to tell her she'd destroyed the town, that without Wickham's leadership, they'd all fall apart. Mrs. Halloran came back. She didn't apologize, but she bought flour. That was something. Tom Brennan stopped by too. Didn't say much. Just nodded at her and left a ham on the counter. Sheriff Garrett sent a messenger to the territorial governor explaining the situation and requesting an official investigation. The reply would take weeks. In the meantime, Wickham and Dalton sat in the jail, and Pike stayed in a cell of his own, supposedly for his protection. Rafe worked in the store, organizing stock, fixing the broken shelves, sweeping the floor. He didn't talk much. Mara didn't push. They'd both been through enough. On Wednesday, a man arrived asking questions. He was young, maybe 25, with ink-stained fingers and a notebook. A journalist from a newspaper 2 towns over. "Miss Vance?" he said, taking off his hat. "My name's Daniel Worth. I heard about what happened here. I'd like to write a story." Mara was immediately wary. "What kind of story?" "The truth. About what Judge Wickham did. About how you stopped him." "I didn't stop him. The town did." "That's not what I heard. I heard you stood up to him when no one else would. Bought a condemned man's life and used it to expose a murderer." Mara crossed her arms. "You planning to make me sound like some kind of hero?" "I'm planning to tell what happened. What happened is complicated, messy. People got hurt. I got lucky." Daniel smiled slightly. "Luck's a part of it. But so is courage. And from what I've heard, you've got plenty of that. A courage or stupidity, depending on who you ask." "Maybe both," Mara sighed. "All right, you want the story? I'll tell you. But you print it honest. No embellishments, no making me into something I'm not." "Deal." They talked for over an hour. Mara told him everything, buying Rafe's bond, investigating Sam's murder, finding the documents, the town meeting, Pike's confession. She showed him the metal box, let him read through some of the contracts. Rafe listened from the back room, occasionally adding details Mara missed. When Daniel finally left, Mara felt drained. Rafe came out, leaning against the doorframe. "Think that was smart?" he asked. "Talking to a reporter? Probably not. But if this is going to mean anything, people need to know what happened. Not just here, everywhere." "You want to be famous?" "I want people to know they can fight back, that they don't have to let men like Wickham run their lives." Rafe studied her. "You really believe that?" "I have to." That night, Mara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in her mind. The look on Wickham's face when Pike confessed, the weight of the gun against her temple, the sound of Rafe's fists hitting bone. She kept thinking about what came next. The trial. The aftermath. What happened to a town when the man who'd run it for 15 years turned out to be a killer? Downstairs, she heard Rafe moving around. She got up, wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, and went down. He was sitting at the counter, a lamp burning low, reading one of the contracts from Sam's box. "Can't sleep either?" Mara asked. He looked up. "Keeps running through my head. All of it." "Yeah, me too." She sat down across from him. For a while, neither of them spoke. "I remember now," Rafe said finally. "That night. Bits of it, anyway." Mara waited. "I was drinking because I just lost my job. Got into a fight with the foreman at the lumber mill. He fired me. I didn't have anywhere to go, so I just walked into the woods and drank until I couldn't feel anything." He paused. "I woke up and there was blood everywhere, on my hands, my coat. I thought I'd done something terrible. Thought maybe I'd hurt someone and couldn't remember." "But you didn't." "No, but I believed I had. That's the worst part. I believed I was capable of it." "We're all capable of terrible things," Mara said quietly, "under the right circumstances. You're not. You don't know that. I saw you stab a man. I saw you stand up to the whole town. You're a lot of things, Mara, but you're not weak, and you're not a killer." She didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. Rafe closed the contract. "What are you going to do after all this? After the trial?" "Run the store, I guess. Try to rebuild." "Oh, think people will come back?" "Some will, some won't, but I'll manage." "And me?" Mara looked at him. "What about you?" "My bond's not done. Legally, I'm still yours for another 11 months. Legally, yeah, but you don't have to stay. You're cleared of murder. You're free to go." Rafe was quiet for a long moment. "What if I don't want to go?" Something shifted in Mara's chest. "Then you don't." "I'm not much good at anything, but I can work. I can help around here." "I can't pay you much." "Don't need much." They sat there, the lamplight flickering between them, and Mara felt something unfamiliar. Hope, maybe. Or just the absence of fear. "All right," she said. "You can stay." "Yeah? Yeah." Rafe almost smiled. "Thanks. Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen how much work needs doing." The following Sunday, the town held a funeral for Sam Greer. Caleb came down from his farm bringing Sam's few belongings. They buried him in the town cemetery, a simple wooden marker with his name carved into it. Mara and Rafe attended. So did most of the town. Even people who'd barely known Sam showed up. It felt like something the town needed, a way to acknowledge what had been lost, what had been stolen. After the service, Caleb pulled Mara aside. "I heard what you did," he said, "standing up to Wickham, risking everything. I didn't do it alone." "No, but you started it. That takes guts." He handed her a small bag. "This was Sam's. He didn't have much, but what he had, he'd want you to have." Mara opened the bag. Inside was a little money, maybe $20, and a pocket watch. "I can't take this," she said. "You can. You earned it. More than that, you honored his memory. That's worth more than money." Mara's throat tightened. She nodded, unable to speak. Caleb squeezed her shoulder. "Thank you." By the end of the second week, the governor's investigator finally arrived, a stern man named Marcus Tolle, who wore a suit and carried a leather case full of papers. He interviewed everyone: Mara, Rafe, Pike, Dalton, half the town. He spent 3 days reviewing documents, taking statements, examining evidence. On the fourth day, he announced his findings in the town hall. A smaller crowd this time, but still significant. Based on the evidence collected, Tolle said, reading from his notes, I am recommending that Judge Amos Wickham be formally charged with murder, conspiracy, fraud, and corruption. Dalton Reed will face charges as an accessory to murder. Pike Fletcher will be charged as well, though his cooperation will be noted in sentencing recommendations. A murmur ran through the crowd. The trial will be held in the territorial capital. All relevant witnesses will be called to testify. This case will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Mara felt a weight lift off her shoulders. It wasn't over yet. Trials could be unpredictable, juries bought, evidence suppressed, but at least it was moving forward. Tolle looked directly at her. Miss Vance, your actions in this matter were irregular and potentially dangerous. However, they were also instrumental in uncovering a significant miscarriage of justice. The territory owes you a debt. I don't want a debt, Mara said. I just want justice. Then you'll have it. That night, Mara and Rafe sat on the porch of the store, watching the sun set over Ashford. The town looked the same as it always had, dusty, worn, struggling, but something had changed, something intangible. You think it'll stick? Rafe asked. The charges? I think so. Tolle seems honest, and there's too many witnesses now, too much evidence. And if Wickham walks anyway? Then we deal with it, together. Rafe glanced at her. Together. Yeah. They sat in silence for a while, watching the light fade. Somewhere down the street, someone was playing a fiddle. The sound drifted on the evening air, sad and sweet. I never thanked you properly, Rafe said, for buying me off that gallows. You've thanked me plenty. No, I mean it. You didn't have to do that. You didn't know me, didn't owe me anything, but you risked everything anyway. Mara thought about that day. The rope, the crowd, the look on Wickham's face when she'd stepped forward. I couldn't let him win, she said simply. Couldn't let him decide who lived and who died based on lies. Still, it was brave. Stupid, maybe, but brave. Same thing, probably. Rafe laughed quietly. Yeah, probably. They stayed there until full dark, two people who'd been strangers 3 weeks ago, now bound by something stronger than law or debt. By choice. By trust. By the refusal to let evil go unchallenged. Inside the store, the metal box sat on the counter, its contents having changed the course of a town. Outside, Ashford settled into uneasy sleep, uncertain of its future but no longer willing to look away from its past. And somewhere in the jail, Wickham sat in his cell, rage burning cold and patient, plotting his next move. Because men like him didn't give up easily. And the fight was far from over. The summons arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a rider wearing the territorial seal. Mara signed for it with hands that had finally stopped shaking, though her stomach still twisted when she broke the wax and unfolded the paper. The trial was set for 3 weeks out. The capital was a 4-day journey by wagon. All witnesses were required to appear. Failure to comply would result in arrest. Rafe read over her shoulder. 3 weeks, that's not much time. No, it's not. You nervous? Mara folded the summons carefully. Terrified. She'd testified before, small disputes, property claims, nothing that mattered. But this was different. This was standing in front of judges and lawyers in a courtroom full of strangers, recounting everything that had happened, every detail, every choice, every moment she'd thought she might die. You'll do fine, Rafe said. He was cleaning the front window, scrubbing away weeks of accumulated grime. The store looked better now. Shelves straightened, inventory organized, floor swept clean. It still wasn't making money, but at least it didn't look abandoned. You don't know that. Yeah, I do. You stood up to Wickham in front of the whole town. A courtroom can't be worse than that. A courtroom has rules, procedures, lawyers who'll twist everything I say. Then don't let them. Mara almost laughed. That's simple, huh? Sometimes, yeah. She wished she had his confidence. Or maybe it wasn't confidence. Maybe it was just the perspective of a man who'd already faced death and come out the other side. When you'd stood on a gallows with a rope around your neck, a courtroom probably didn't seem so bad. The door opened and Sheriff Garrett walked in, hat in hand. He looked older than he had 3 weeks ago. Tired. Like he'd been carrying something heavy and finally put it down, only to find the weight had left permanent marks. "Miss Vance, Rafe." "Sheriff." Mara set the summons on the counter. "I assume you got one too?" "Yeah, came this morning." He turned his hat in his hands, a nervous gesture. "Listen, I wanted to apologize for not seeing what Wickham was doing sooner, for not standing up when I should have." "You stood up when it counted," Mara said. "Maybe, but it took you forcing my hand. That's not something I'm proud of." Rafe kept cleaning the window, but Mara could tell he was listening. "We all did what we thought we had to," Mara said. "Can't change it now." Garrett nodded slowly. "I also wanted to warn you. Wickham's been talking, making threats. Says he's got friends in the Capitol. Says the trial's going to go his way no matter what we testify." "Is he right?" "I don't know. Maybe. He's got money, connections, and juries can be bought." Garrett met her eyes. "You need to be careful, both of you. Wickham's the kind of man who holds grudges." "I'm aware." "I mean it. He's dangerous. Even locked up, he's dangerous." "Then maybe they shouldn't let him out. They have to, for the trial. He'll be transported under guard, but still. Just watch yourselves." After Garrett left, Rafe finally stopped cleaning and turned to face her. "You think he's right? About Wickham having friends?" "Probably. Men like him always do." "So what do? We go to the trial, we tell the truth, and we hope it's enough." "And if it's not?" Mara didn't have an answer for that. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Mara went over her testimony with Marcus Tolle, who'd stayed in town to coordinate the prosecution. He was thorough, methodical, asking the same questions a dozen different ways until Mara wanted to scream. "Why did you buy his bond?" he'd ask. "Because I didn't think he was guilty." "Why not?" "Because the evidence didn't make sense. Because I knew Sam Greer and I knew Wickham." "That's not evidence. That's intuition." "Then call it intuition. I was right, wasn't I?" Tolle would make a note in his book and move to the next question, over and over until Mara could recite her answers in her sleep. Rafe went through the same process, though his testimony was simpler. He couldn't remember the night of the murder, so he focused on what happened after, being arrested, sitting in jail, waiting to hang, Pike's confession, the fight in the town hall. Pike was being kept in a separate cell now, away from Wickham and Dalton. Tolle visited him daily, refining his testimony, making sure he wouldn't break under cross-examination. Pike's cooperation was the linchpin of the case. Without him, it was just documents and circumstantial evidence. With him, they had an eyewitness to murder. 3 days before they were set to leave for the Capitol, Daniel Worth's article appeared in the newspaper. Someone brought a copy to the store, and Mara read it standing behind the counter while Rafe looked over her shoulder. The headline read, "Shopkeeper's Courage Exposes Frontier Corruption." Mara winced. "I told him not to make me sound like a hero." "Too late," Rafe said, reading. "Listen to this. In a town where justice had been bought and sold for years, one woman dared to stand alone against tyranny. I didn't stand alone. You were there. Pike, Caleb, half the town. Yes. He's got to sell papers. Town collectively does the right thing, doesn't have the same ring." The article was detailed, accurate where it counted, but it painted Mara in colors she didn't recognize. Brave, fearless, a beacon of hope in a corrupt wilderness. It made her uncomfortable, like wearing clothes that didn't fit. But it also meant people were paying attention. The story spread beyond Ashford, carried by riders and railway lines, reaching towns and cities she'd never seen. Letters started arriving, some supportive, some calling her a troublemaker, some threatening violence if she testified. She burned the threatening ones and kept the rest in a drawer, unsure what else to do with them. The day before they left, Mara closed the store early and walked to Sam Greer's grave. She'd been meaning to go for weeks, but kept finding reasons not to. Now, with the trial looming, it felt necessary. The cemetery was on a hill overlooking the town, wind-scoured and sparse. Sam's grave was near the back, marked by the simple wooden cross Caleb had made. Someone had left wildflowers, now dried and brittle. Mara stood there, hands clasped, trying to find words. She'd never been good at this. Talking to the dead, pretending they could hear. It felt false, performative. But she tried anyway. "I'm doing my best," she said quietly. "I know it's not enough. Nothing will bring you back. But I'm trying to make sure it meant something. Your death, your fight." The wind picked up, rattling the dried flowers. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Scared I'll mess this up. Scared Wickham will walk free and everything we did will be for nothing." She waited, like maybe Sam would answer, like maybe the dead had wisdom the living lacked. But there was only wind and silence. She left the flowers where they were and walked back to town as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that looked like fire. They departed at dawn, a convoy of 3 wagons. Mara and Rafe in the first, driven by Tom Brennan, who'd volunteered to take them. Sheriff Garrett and 2 deputies in the second, transporting Wickham, Dalton, and Pike. Marcus Tolley in the third with his documents and evidence. The journey was long and uncomfortable. The roads were rough, the weather unpredictable. Rain on the second day turned the trail to mud, slowing their progress. They camped at night, eating cold beans and hardtack, sleeping in bedrolls under the wagons. Wickham was kept shackled and under constant watch, but Mara could feel his presence like a physical weight. Every time she glanced back at the second wagon, she saw him sitting there, staring at her with flat, emotionless eyes. On the third night, Tom pulled her aside while Rafe was gathering firewood. "You sure about this?" Tom asked. "About what?" "Testifying. Going through with it. You could still back out, head home." "And let Wickham win?" "Better than getting yourself killed." Mara looked at him, surprised. "You think it'll come to that?" Tom shrugged. "I think powerful men don't go down easy, and I think you've made yourself a target." "I made myself a target the moment I bought Rafe's bond." "Yeah, maybe you did." Tom spat into the fire. "Just be careful, that's all I'm saying." The Capitol appeared on the 4th day, a sprawling collection of buildings that made Ashford look like a child's toy. Mara had been here once before, years ago, and the sight still overwhelmed her. So many people. So much noise. They were taken to a boarding house near the courthouse, given rooms that smelled like lye and old wood. Wickham and the others were transported directly to the territorial jail, a stone building with barred windows and guards at every entrance. Toll gathered them that evening in the boarding house common room. "The trial starts tomorrow," he said. "Opening arguments in the morning. We'll call our first witnesses in the afternoon. Mara, you're up first, then Rafe, then Pike." "What about Wickham?" Rafe asked. "Does he testify?" "He has the right to. Whether he will or not, I don't know. His lawyer's good. A man named Silas Crane. He'll try to poke holes in everything we say." "What kind of holes?" Mara asked. "He'll question your motives. Why you really bought Rafe's bond. Whether you had a personal grudge against Wickham. He'll paint Pike as a liar trying to save his own skin. He'll argue the documents are forgeries." "They're not." "I know, but he'll argue it anyway. That's his job." Mara felt her stomach clench. "So what do we do?" "You tell the truth. Clearly, simply, without embellishment. Don't let Crane rattle you. Don't get angry. Just answer the questions and trust the evidence." "That's it?" "That's it." It didn't feel like enough. The courtroom was smaller than Mara expected, but more formal. Dark wood, high ceilings, a judge's bench that looked like a throne. Rows of seats for spectators, already filling up with people Mara didn't know. Reporters, lawyers, the curious. She sat in the front row with Rafe and Tolle, hands folded in her lap, trying to keep her breathing steady. Across the aisle, Wickham sat with his lawyer, Silas Crane, a thin man with sharp features and expensive clothes. Wickham looked different in a suit, cleaned up, almost respectable. The bruises from his fight with Rafe had faded, leaving only a faint yellow tint around one eye. He didn't look at her, just stared straight ahead, expression blank. The judge entered. A woman, which surprised Mara. Judge Harriet Moresby, maybe 60, with iron gray hair and a face that looked like it had seen everything and believed none of it. "All rise," the bailiff called. Everyone stood. Moresby took her seat and surveyed the room. "This is the case of the Territory versus Amos Wickham. We're here to determine if sufficient evidence exists to warrant a trial for murder, conspiracy, and corruption. This is a preliminary hearing, not a full trial. Mr. Tolle, you may proceed. Toll stood. Thank you, Your Honor. The territory will demonstrate that Amos Wickham, former judge of Ashford, orchestrated the murder of Samuel Greer to prevent testimony that would have exposed years of fraud and corruption. We have documentary evidence, witness testimony, and a confession from an accomplice. The evidence will show— Save it for your witnesses, Moresby interrupted. Mr. Crane? Silas Crane stood smoothly. Your Honor, the defense will show that this case is built on conjecture and the testimony of criminals seeking leniency. Amos Wickham is a decorated public servant who has given 15 years of his life to bringing order to a lawless territory. The accusations against him are false, motivated by personal vendettas, and— Also save it, Moresby said. Call your first witness, Mr. Toll. The territory calls Mara Vance. Mara's legs felt weak as she stood. Rafe squeezed her hand briefly before she walked to the witness stand. The bailiff swore her in, and she sat, gripping the armrest to keep her hands still. Tolle approached, his expression calm and encouraging. Miss Vance, please state your occupation. I own a general store in Ashford. And on the day in question, you attended a public execution? Yes. Why? Because I believe the condemned man was innocent. Based on what evidence? Mara took a breath. Based on knowing the victim, Samuel Greer, and knowing Judge Wickham's reputation. Sam was about to testify against Wickham in a land dispute. 3 days later, he was dead. The timing seemed convenient. Objection, Crane said lazily. Speculation. Sustained, Moresby said. Stick to facts, Miss Vance. Mara nodded. Sam told me personally that Wickham was pressuring him to sell his land. He refused. Then he was killed. And you believed Rafe Calder was innocent because? Because the evidence against him was thin. Blood on a coat. No witnesses, no weapon. It didn't add up. So you bought his bond? Yes. Knowing that if he committed another crime, you would be held responsible? Yes. Tolle walked back to his table, picked up the metal box. What's this? Documents belonging to Samuel Greer. Contracts, ledgers, proof of Wickham's corruption. And where did you obtain these? From Sam's brother, Caleb Greer. Sam gave them to him for safekeeping before he died. Toll opened the box, pulled out several papers. Can you identify these? Land transfers, all signed by Wickham, all fraudulent, purchased under duress or through intimidation. Objection, Crane said, standing. The witness is not qualified to determine what's fraudulent. I'll rephrase, Toll said. Miss Vance, what did these documents show? That Wickham was using his position to force people off their land and buy it cheap. Thank you. No further questions. Crane stood, buttoning his jacket. He approached the witness stand slowly, like he had all the time in the world. Miss Vance, you testified that you believed Mr. Calder was innocent. But you didn't actually know, did you? No, not for certain. In fact, Mr. Calder himself couldn't remember what happened that night, correct? He was drunk. So he could have killed Samuel Greer and simply forgotten? The blood on his coat wasn't Sam's. It was from a deer. According to Pike Fletcher, a known criminal, you're taking his word? He confessed. After you'd already bought Mr. Calder's bond. After you'd already committed to proving him innocent. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? Mara's jaw tightened. He confessed because he was tired of lying. Or because you convinced him it was in his best interest. Crane paced. Tell me, Miss Vance, did you have any personal relationship with Rafe Calder before you bought his bond? No? None at all? I'd seen him around town. We'd never spoken. And yet you risked everything for him. Your business, your reputation, your life. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. Oh, or because you wanted to destroy Judge Wickham. I wanted to find the truth. Did you? Crane leaned on the witness box. Or did you decide what the truth was and then look for evidence to support it? The evidence speaks for itself. Does it? These documents, he gestured to the metal box, they show business transactions. Aggressive, perhaps. Unethical, maybe. But not murder. They show motive. They show ambition, success, things that make small-minded people jealous. Crane's voice hardened. You run a failing store, Miss Vance. You have no family, no standing in the community. And then you see a chance to make yourself important, to be the hero who brings down the powerful judge. Isn't that what this is really about? Mara's hands were shaking again, but she forced her voice steady. No. No further questions. She stepped down, legs weak, and returned to her seat. Rafe leaned close. You did good. She didn't feel like she had. Rafe was called next. His testimony was shorter, more direct. He couldn't remember the night of the murder. He described being arrested, jailed, sentenced to hang. Then Mara buying his bond, helping her investigate, finding the documents. Crane tried the same tactics, questioning his memory, his motives, his credibility as a drunk with a criminal record. But Rafe didn't rattle. He answered each question the same way. I don't know, when he didn't know. Yes or no, when he did. When he stepped down, Mara could see the frustration on Crane's face. Then Pike was called. He walked to the stand slowly, head down, like a man going to his own execution. He looked thinner than Mara remembered, his scar standing out stark against pale skin. Tolle led him through the events of that night, going to Sam's cabin on Wickham's orders, trying to intimidate him into selling, the argument that turned violent. And who killed Samuel Greer? Tolle asked. Pike's voice was barely a whisper. Dalton cut his throat while I held him down. And Judge Wickham? He watched, told us to make it look like a robbery gone wrong. Why did you follow his orders? Because he's the judge, because he had power, because I was scared. And why are you testifying now? Pike finally looked up, meeting Tolle's eyes. Because I'm tired of being scared, tired of carrying it. Crane's cross-examination was brutal. He attacked Pike's character, his past, every lie he'd ever told. He suggested Pike was the real mastermind, that he was blaming Wickham to save himself. You've been arrested 6 times, Mr. Fletcher. Assault, theft, public drunkenness. Why should anyone believe you? Because I'm telling the truth. Are you? Or are you just trying to avoid the noose? I'll hang anyway, for what I did, but at least I'll hang knowing I told the truth. Very convenient, very noble. Crane's voice dripped with sarcasm. Tell me, how much did Miss Vance pay you to say this? Nobody paid me nothing. No? She didn't offer you leniency? A reduced sentence? The prosecutor did, not her. And yet she's the one who started this whole crusade. She's the one who convinced you to turn on Judge Wickham. Pike shook his head. She just gave me a reason to do what I should have done from the start. When Pike stepped down, the courtroom buzzed with whispers. Moresby banged her gavel. Order. We'll recess until tomorrow morning. Court dismissed. Mara stood on shaky legs, exhausted. The first day was over, but it felt like they'd only just begun. That night, back at the boarding house, Mara couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. She kept replaying Crane's questions, wondering if she'd said the wrong thing, if she'd given him ammunition. Rafe found her sitting on the porch, staring at nothing. You all right? He asked. I don't know. Are we winning? I think so. Pike's testimony was strong. Crane made him look like a liar. Crane's doing his job, but the jury? There is no jury, not yet. Moresby decides if there's enough for a full trial. Then we trust her. What if we can't? Rafe sat down beside her. Then we deal with it, together. Remember? Mara nodded, too tired to argue. In the distance, she could hear the city, horses, voices, the clatter of wagons. It never got quiet here, never stopped moving. She wondered if Wickham was awake too, in his cell, plotting his next move. Wondered if any of this would be enough. Wondered if truth really mattered in a world where power made the rules. Tomorrow would bring more testimony, more questions, more chances to fail. But tonight, sitting in the dark with Rafe beside her, Mara allowed herself to hope. Just a little. Morning came too fast and brought rain with it, cold, relentless sheets that turned the streets outside the boarding house into rivers of mud. Mara stood at the window watching water pour off the eaves while Rafe made coffee on the small stove in the corner of their shared room. Neither of them had slept well. You want some? Rafe asked, holding up a tin cup. Yeah, thanks. The coffee was bitter and weak, but it was hot. Mara wrapped her hands around the cup, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. Her stomach felt like it was tied in knots. Second day? Rafe said. Tolley thinks it'll wrap up today. Maybe tomorrow. Then Moresby decides. Yeah. What if she says no? What if she throws it out? Then we go home and figure out what's next. Mara looked at him. Just like that? What else can we do? We told the truth. We gave them everything. If it's not enough, then it's not enough. She wanted to argue, to say it had to be enough, that they couldn't come this far just to lose, but she was too tired, too worn down by Crane's questions and the weight of what they were trying to do. Come on, Rafe said. We should get to the courthouse. Tolley wanted to meet before the session starts. They walked through the rain, heads down, clothes soaked by the time they reached the stone steps of the courthouse. Inside, the building smelled like wet wool and old paper. Toll was waiting in a side room, sorting through documents. Good morning, he said, though his expression suggested there was nothing good about it. We have a problem. Mara's stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Dalton's lawyer approached me this morning. He's offering a deal. Dalton will testify against Wickham in exchange for a reduced sentence. That's good, isn't it? Rafe asked. Another witness? It would be, except Crane's already filed a motion to exclude his testimony. Says it's coerced, that we're bribing witnesses with lighter sentences. But Pike's already testified, Mara said, and Crane's arguing that Pike's testimony is tainted for the same reason. He wants both excluded. Can he do that? He can try. Moresby will rule on it this morning. Tolley ran a hand through his hair, looking older than he had yesterday. If she excludes them, we're left with the documents and your testimony. It might not be enough. The courtroom was more crowded than the day before. Word had spread about the case, and spectators packed the benches, craning their necks to see. Mara spotted Daniel Worth in the back, notebook in hand. A few faces from Ashford, too. Tom Brennan, Mrs. Halloran, others who'd made the journey to watch. Wickham sat at the defense table looking calm, almost bored, like this was all an inconvenience he'd soon put behind him. Judge Moresby entered and the room fell silent. We have motions to address, she said without preamble. Mr. Crane, you've filed to exclude testimony from Pike Fletcher and potentially from Dalton Reed. Make your argument. Crane stood smoothly. Your Honor, the prosecution has built its case on the word of confessed criminals who are testifying only to save themselves from execution. Pike Fletcher was promised leniency. Dalton Reed is now being offered the same. This isn't testimony, it's bribery. The prosecution is buying the narrative it wants. Toll shot to his feet. Your Honor, it's standard practice to offer cooperation deals to accomplices. Without such deals, we'd never prosecute organized crime or conspiracy. These men are telling the truth because they're finally willing to face the consequences of their actions. Or because they're smart enough to know a good deal when they see one, Crane countered. Pike Fletcher has lied his entire life. Why should we believe him now because the prosecution promises him a lighter sentence? That's not justice. That's theater. Moresby looked between them, expression unreadable. I'll take this under advisement. We'll proceed with other testimony while I consider the motion. Mr. Tolley, call your next witness. The territory calls Caleb Greer. Caleb walked to the stand with the same quiet dignity he'd shown at Sam's funeral. He was sworn in and sat, hands folded in his lap. Toll approached. Mr. Greer, you're the brother of Samuel Greer, the deceased? Yes. Tell the court about your brother's relationship with Judge Wickham. Caleb's voice was steady but quiet. Sam owned land adjacent to property Wickham wanted. Wickham tried to buy it cheap. Sam refused. Then Wickham started using his position to make Sam's life difficult. Refused permits, imposed fines, threatened legal action. Did your brother document this? Yes. He kept records of every interaction, every threat. He was planning to take it to the territorial governor. And 3 days before he could do that, he was murdered. Objection, Crane said. Assumes facts not in evidence. Sustained. Rephrase, Mr. Tolley. 3 days before he could file his complaint, your brother was killed? Yes. Tolley presented the documents from the metal box, having Caleb identify them one by one. Letters from Wickham. Contracts. Evidence of the land dispute. Did your brother fear for his life? Tolley asked. Yes. He told me if anything happened to him, I should make sure these documents got to the right people. And why didn't you come forward immediately after his death? Caleb's voice dropped. Because I was scared. Wickham had power. I didn't think anyone would believe me over him. What changed? Miss Vance. She believed. And she had the courage I didn't. Crane's cross-examination was brief but pointed. Mr. Greer, you admit you were too frightened to come forward with these documents until Miss Vance pushed you to do so. Yes. And you're aware that Miss Vance had already bought the bond of the man accused of killing your brother? I am. Doesn't it strike you as odd that she was so invested in proving Mr. Calder's innocence? A man she'd never met? No, it strikes me as decent. Or calculated. Perhaps she had her own reasons for wanting to destroy Judge Wickham's reputation. If she did, I don't know them. I just know she did what I should have done. Caleb stepped down, and Tolle called his next witness, Sheriff Garrett. Garrett testified about the arrest, the evidence, the rushed nature of the trial. How Wickham had pushed for a quick execution. Why do you think Judge Wickham wanted Rafe Calder hanged so quickly? Tolle asked. Because a dead man can't defend himself, can't raise questions. Once Calder swung, the case was closed. Crane objected, but Moresby allowed it. The morning stretched on with more witnesses, townspeople who'd been threatened by Wickham, business owners who'd been forced to sell. Each one added another piece to the puzzle, another crack in Wickham's facade. But Mara could see Crane wasn't worried. He barely cross-examined most of them, saving his energy for something bigger. At noon, Moresby called a recess. Mara, Rafe, and Tolle huddled in the side room, eating sandwiches that tasted like sawdust. It's going well, Tolle said, though he didn't sound convinced. Crane's planning something, Mara said. He's too calm. He's going to call Wickham to testify. That's his ace. A respected judge defending himself against accusations from criminals and nobodies. Tolle set down his sandwich, uneaten. We need to be ready for that. How do you prepare for someone to lie under oath? Rafe asked. You expose the lie. You make the jury, or in this case, the judge, see through it. There is no jury, Mara reminded him. Then we make Moresby see through it. When court reconvened, Crane stood. The defense calls Amos Wickham. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Wickham rose, straightened his jacket, and walked to the stand with the bearing of a man completely in control. He was sworn in and sat, meeting Crane's eyes with confidence. Judge Wickham, Crane began, how long did you serve as the territorial judge for Ashford? 15 years. And in that time, how would you characterize your service? I brought order to a lawless place. When I arrived, Ashford was barely a town. Now it has schools, businesses, infrastructure. I'm proud of what I helped build. Did you ever abuse your position for personal gain? Never. Did you murder Samuel Greer? Absolutely not. Do you know who did? Rafe Calder. The evidence was clear. Blood on his clothing. No alibi. He was seen leaving the area where Sam's body was found. And yet Miss Vance bought his bond and has spent considerable effort trying to prove his innocence. Why do you think that is? Wickham shook his head slowly, the picture of bewildered concern. I honestly don't know. Perhaps she's lonely. Perhaps she saw an opportunity to insert herself into something larger than her failing business. Or perhaps she genuinely believes she's doing the right thing, however misguided. Did you ever threaten Samuel Greer? I negotiated with him, firmly, yes, but that's business. It's not murder. These documents the prosecution presented, contracts, letters. Do you deny writing them? I don't deny writing them. I deny they prove anything criminal. I was a businessman before I was a judge. I bought and sold property. Sometimes negotiations were contentious. That's the nature of frontier commerce. Did you order Pike Fletcher and Dalton Reed to kill Samuel Greer? I did not. I barely knew Pike Fletcher. Dalton worked as an executioner, yes, but I had no social relationship with him. The idea that I would trust men like them with something so serious is absurd. Crane nodded, satisfied. No further questions. Tolle stood for cross-examination, and Mara could see the tension in his shoulders. This was it, the moment that could break the case open or bury it. Judge Wickham, Tolle began, you testified that you barely knew Pike Fletcher. Is that correct? Yes. Then why did Pike testify that he worked for you, that you paid him for various tasks over the years? I have no idea why he said that. Perhaps Miss Vance convinced him to lie. Or perhaps you're lying now. Objection! Crane shot to his feet. Sustained. Rephrase, Mr. Toll. Tolley pulled out a ledger. This is a financial record from your office, seized during the investigation. It shows multiple payments to Pike Fletcher over a 5-year period. Small amounts, $20 here, $50 there. What were these payments for? Wickham's jaw tightened slightly. I don't recall. Probably odd jobs. Property maintenance. Property maintenance. Tolley flipped through the pages. 200 payments over 5 years. That's a lot of odd jobs. I don't manage every detail of my finances. No, but you do sign every check. Your signature is here and here and here. Tolley held up the ledger. You paid Pike Fletcher regularly for years. And you expect us to believe you barely knew him? I knew him in passing. That's not the same as trusting him with murder. What about Dalton Reed? Did you know him in passing too? He was the town executioner. He was also the man who killed Samuel Greer, according to Pike's testimony. Pike's testimony is worthless. Is it? Because these financial records corroborate his story. They show you paid both Pike and Dalton, regularly, just like Pike said. Wickham's composure was cracking, just slightly, a tightness around his eyes. Those payments don't prove murder. No, but they prove you lied when you said you barely knew them. Tolley set down the ledger. Let's talk about Samuel Greer. You testified that your negotiations with him were simply contentious business dealings. Yet Sam told multiple people, including his brother, that you threatened him, that you used your position as judge to intimidate him. Was that standard business practice too? I never threatened him. No? Then why did Sam keep a record of every interaction you had? Why did he document threats, pressure, attempts to force him off his land? I can't speak to what Sam Greer wrote in his personal papers. I can only speak to the truth. The truth. Toll paced. The truth is that Sam Greer was about to expose your corruption. The truth is that you had motive to silence him. The truth is that 3 days before he could testify, he was murdered by 2 men who were on your payroll. That's speculation. Is it? Or is it the only logical conclusion when you look at all the evidence together? Wickham leaned forward. The logical conclusion is that Rafe Calder, a drunken drifter with a violent past, killed Sam Greer during a robbery. Everything else is a desperate attempt by a lonely woman to justify her own poor judgment. That lonely woman risked everything to expose you, Toll shot back. While you, a man who swore to uphold justice, twisted the law to serve yourself. I served my community for 15 years. By killing anyone who stood in your way? I never killed anyone. Then why did Pike Fletcher confess? Why did he say you ordered the murder? What does he gain by lying? A lighter sentence, a deal, the prosecution's favor. Or he gains peace, the ability to finally stop carrying the weight of what you made him do. Wickham's hands gripped the armrests of the witness chair. I made him do nothing. He's a criminal, a liar, and you're using him to destroy a good man's reputation. A good man doesn't murder witnesses. A good man doesn't abuse his position for profit. A good man doesn't let an innocent person hang to protect himself. Objection! Crane was on his feet. Counsel is testifying, not questioning. Sustained. Mr. Tolley, ask questions. Tolley took a breath, reining himself in. Judge Wickham, did you kill Samuel Greer? No. Did you order his death? No. Did you know he was going to be killed? A pause. Just a fraction of a second. But Mara saw it. Everyone saw it. No, Wickham said. Then how do you explain the fact that you rushed Rafe Calder's trial? That you pushed for an execution within days rather than weeks? That you seemed so certain of his guilt when the evidence was circumstantial at best? Because the evidence was sufficient. Because I saw no reason to delay justice. Or because you wanted him dead before anyone could ask questions, before anyone could look too closely at what really happened. That's absurd, is it? Tolla walked back to his table, picked up a document. This is the execution order you signed, dated the same day as the trial. Most condemned men have at least a week before execution. You gave Calder 2 days. Why the rush? There was no rush. It was efficient. Efficient or necessary. Necessary because if Rafe Calder lived long enough to mount a defense, the truth might come out. Wickham's face had gone red. I have dedicated my life to this territory, to bringing order, safety, prosperity, and you sit here and accuse me of murder based on the word of criminals and a woman with a grudge. I accuse you based on evidence, financial records, witness testimony, your own actions. The pattern is clear to anyone willing to see it. There is no pattern. There is only a conspiracy to destroy me. Tolle met his eyes. Who's conspiring, Judge Wickham? The dead man you had killed? The witnesses too scared to come forward until now? Or the woman who had the courage to stand up to you? I have nothing more to say. Then we're done here. Tolle turned to Moresby. No further questions. Wickham stepped down, his composure barely intact. He walked back to the defense table, movement stiff, jaw clenched so tight Mara could see the muscle jumping. Crane called a few more witnesses, character references, people who spoke glowingly of Wickham's service to the community. But the damage was done. Mara could see it in the way people in the gallery whispered, in the way Moresby watched Wickham with narrowed eyes. By late afternoon, both sides rested. Moresby called a recess to review the evidence and consider the motions. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning for my ruling, she said. Court adjourned. The crowd dispersed slowly. Mara sat frozen in her seat, exhausted beyond words. Rafe touched her shoulder. Come on, let's get out of here. They walked back to the boarding house in silence, the rain finally letting up. The city streets were quieter now, the evening settling in. In their room, Mara collapsed onto the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. Do you think it was enough? I don't know. But Wickham's scared. You could see it. Scared men are dangerous. Yeah, they are. Mara closed her eyes. Every muscle in her body ached. She'd been running on fear and determination for so long, she'd forgotten what it felt like to just stop. Whatever happens tomorrow, Rafe said quietly, you did the right thing. You stood up. You fought. That matters. Does it? If Moresby throws it out, if Wickham walks, then we tried. And maybe that's all we can do. Mara wanted to believe that, wanted to think that trying was enough, but she'd seen too much to be that naive. Somewhere across town, Wickham sat in his cell, plotting, planning, waiting, and tomorrow would decide everything. That night, Mara dreamed of the gallows, of Rafe standing there, rope around his neck, looking at her with empty eyes, of Wickham's voice saying, "This isn't over," of fire spreading through Ashford, consuming everything she'd fought to protect. She woke before dawn, heart pounding, sheets soaked with sweat. Rafe was already awake, sitting by the window. Couldn't sleep either? He asked. No. They sat together in the gray pre-dawn light, waiting for the sun to rise, waiting for the day that would determine their fate. The courtroom was packed by the time they arrived, standing room only. Mara recognized faces from the newspapers she'd seen Daniel Worth showing around, other journalists who'd come to watch the conclusion. Judge Moresby entered exactly on time, carrying a thick folder of notes. She sat, arranged her papers, and looked out over the courtroom. I've reviewed all testimony and evidence presented in this case, she began. I've also considered the defense's motion to exclude testimony from Pike Fletcher and any potential testimony from Dalton Reed. Mara held her breath. The motion is denied. While it's true that both men have been offered deals in exchange for cooperation, such arrangements are standard prosecutorial practice. The question is not whether they benefit from testifying, but whether their testimony is credible and corroborated by other evidence. In this case, I find that it is. Crane's face darkened. Wickham stared straight ahead, expressionless. Furthermore, Moresby continued, the documentary evidence presented by the prosecution, combined with witness testimony, establishes a clear pattern of corruption and abuse of power. The financial records linking Judge Wickham to both Pike Fletcher and Dalton Reed directly contradict his testimony that he barely knew them. This damages his credibility significantly. She paused, looking directly at Wickham. The question before me is whether sufficient evidence exists to warrant a full trial on charges of murder, conspiracy, and corruption. After careful consideration, I find that it does. Judge Amos Wickham will stand trial for the murder of Samuel Greer. Bail is denied. The defendant will remain in custody pending trial. The courtroom erupted. Shouts, gasps, the scrape of benches as people stood. Moresby banged her gavel repeatedly. Order! This hearing is concluded. Wickham shot to his feet, face twisted with rage. This is a travesty. You're condemning an innocent man based on lies and... Two guards moved forward, gripping his arms. He jerked away, still shouting. You think this is over? You think you've won? I have friends, connections. This won't stand. Remove him, Moresby ordered. The guards dragged Wickham toward the side door. He fought them, still screaming threats, promises of revenge. His voice echoed through the courtroom even after the door closed behind him. Mara sat stunned, unable to process what had just happened. They'd won. Moresby had ruled in their favor. Wickham would stand trial. Rafe grabbed her hand, squeezing tight. We did it. We did it, she repeated, the words feeling surreal. Toll was shaking hands with people, accepting congratulations. Reporters swarmed, shouting questions. Daniel Worth pushed through the crowd toward Mara. Miss Vance, can I get a statement? Mara shook her head. Not now, please. Just one question. How does it feel to know you brought down one of the most powerful men in the territory? She looked at him, trying to find words. It feels like we're not done yet. This was just the first step. But you won. We survived. That's not the same thing. Outside the courthouse, the rain had stopped and weak sunlight broke through the clouds. Mara stood on the steps, breathing in air that felt cleaner somehow. Lighter. People from Ashford gathered around. Tom, Mrs. Halloran, others who'd made the journey. They didn't say much, just nodded, offering quiet acknowledgement of what had been accomplished. Sheriff Garrett approached. You should be proud, both of you. I'm just relieved, Mara said. Wickham meant what he said, about this not being over. He's got connections. He'll fight the trial with everything he has. Let him fight. We'll be ready. Garrett nodded slowly. Yeah, I believe you will. The journey back to Ashford took the same 4 days, but it felt different, lighter. People talked more, laughed occasionally. Even Tom seemed less grim. Wickham, Dalton, and Pike remained in the territorial jail, awaiting trial. The actual murder trial would come later, months probably. But for now, it was enough that they were locked up, that the truth was on record. Mara spent most of the journey staring out at the landscape, watching the mountains give way to plains, the plains to scrubland. Somewhere out there was Ashford, her store, her life. She wondered what she'd find when she got back. If the town would welcome her or shun her, if standing up to Wickham had made her a hero or a pariah, probably both. On the last night before they reached Ashford, Mara and Rafe sat by the campfire while the others slept. The stars were bright overhead, the air cool and sharp. What are you going to do now? Rafe asked. After all this settles? I don't know. Run the store, try to make it work. You? Same, I guess. If you'll have me. Your bond still has months left. Legally, you're stuck with me. That's not what I'm asking. Mara looked at him. In the firelight, his face looked different than it had on the gallows that day. Less haunted, more alive. Then yeah, she said, I'll have you. Partner? Partner. They shook hands, and Mara felt something shift, a foundation settling into place. They'd been through fire together, survived things that should have killed them. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Ashford appeared on the horizon at midday, dust and buildings, and the promise of something familiar. As they rolled into town, people stopped what they were doing to watch. Some waved. Others just stared. Mara climbed down from the wagon in front of her store. The sign was still there, faded but standing. The windows were dirty, the door hung slightly crooked, but it was hers. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. Dust coated everything. The place smelled stale, closed up, but underneath that was something else. Potential. Rafe followed her in, setting down their bags. Needs work. Everything needs work. Good thing we've got time. Mara walked to the counter, running her hand along the scarred wood. So much had happened here, so much had changed, but some things remained constant. The will to survive, the refusal to give up, the quiet determination to build something worth defending. She looked at Rafe. Let's get started. And they did. The first week back in Ashford was harder than Mara expected. She'd thought winning the hearing would change things, that people would see her differently. Some did. Mrs. Halloran came by with a basket of vegetables she'd grown, wouldn't take no for an answer. The blacksmith brought over a bent hinge from the store's front door and fixed it without being asked. Small gestures, quiet acknowledgments, but others stayed away. The banker who'd foreclosed on 3 families at Wickham's direction wouldn't meet her eyes when they passed on the street. The saloon owner who'd benefited from Wickham's protection for years spread rumors that Mara had fabricated evidence, that she'd seduced Rafe and was using him to get revenge for some imagined slight. People believed what they wanted to believe, what was easier to accept. Rafe spent his days fixing the store, replacing rotted boards, patching the roof, building new shelves. Physical work that kept his hands busy and his mind quiet. Mara watched him sometimes, saw the way he moved with purpose now, like he'd found something worth building instead of just surviving. They didn't talk about what came next. The trial was months away, scheduled for late fall. Until then, all they could do was wait and try to rebuild what they'd nearly lost. On the 8th day, a letter arrived. Mara recognized Marcus Tolle's handwriting immediately. She opened it standing behind the counter while Rafe swept the floor. The words hit her like a physical blow. "What is it?" Rafe asked, seeing her face go pale. Wickham's lawyer filed an appeal. Crane's arguing that Moresby was biased, that she should have recused herself. He's asking for the ruling to be overturned and the case dismissed. Can he do that? Apparently he's doing it. Mara read further. The Territorial Supreme Court will hear arguments next month. If they side with Crane, everything we did was for nothing. Wickham walks free. The broom clattered to the floor. That's impossible. We had witnesses, evidence, Pike's confession. And Crane's arguing all of it was tainted, that Moresby let personal feelings cloud her judgment. Mara crumpled the letter, then smoothed it out again, forcing herself to read the rest. Tolle says we need to be prepared for anything. The cases like this have been overturned before on procedural grounds. So we might lose anyway. Yeah, we might. They stood there in the dusty store, the weight of it settling over them like ash. All the risk, all the fear, all the nights Mara had lain awake wondering if they'd survive. And it might end with a legal technicality and Wickham laughing from his cell. What do we do? Rafe asked. We keep going. What else is there? That afternoon, Sheriff Garrett stopped by. He looked older than he had even a week ago, lines deepening around his eyes and mouth. Heard about the appeal. News travels fast. Always does in places like this. He leaned against the counter. I wanted to warn you. Wickham's been talking to people from his cell, sending letters. He's got connections we didn't know about, businessmen in the capital, politicians, even a few territorial officials who owe him favors. Mara's chest tightened. Meaning what? Meaning he's not going down quiet. He's pulling every string he can reach. And some of those strings are attached to powerful people who don't want their own dirt exposed. So they'll help him? They'll try. Whether they succeed depends on how well Tolle can counter them. Garrett pushed off the counter. Just be ready. And be careful. Men like Wickham, they're dangerous even from behind bars. After he left, Rafe locked the front door even though it was only mid-afternoon. We should talk about this. What's there to talk about? Whether we keep fighting or walk away. We could leave Mara, pack up, head west, start over somewhere no one knows us. And Wickham wins. Wickham's locked up. That's something. It's not enough. Mara sat down heavily on the stool behind the counter. If he gets out, if this appeal works, he'll come after us. You know he will. And he'll hurt everyone who stood with us. Pike, Caleb, all the witnesses. We have to see this through. Even if it kills us? Especially then. Rafe stared at her for a long moment. You're not going to back down, are you? No. Didn't think so. He almost smiled. All right then. We fight. That night, Mara couldn't sleep. She sat at the small table in her room above the store, the letter spread out in front of her, reading it over and over like the words might change if she looked long enough. The lamp burned low, casting shadows that seemed to move on their own. A knock at the door startled her. She grabbed the knife she kept nearby, the same small blade she'd used on Wickham, and approached cautiously. It's me, Rafe's voice came through. She opened the door. He stood there in his shirt sleeves, hair disheveled, looking as tired as she felt. Couldn't sleep either, he said. No. Can I come in? She stepped back, letting him enter. He looked around the sparse room. Bed, table, chair, a trunk with her few belongings. Nothing extra. Nothing wasted. The room told the story of someone who'd learned to live with less, who'd gotten used to being ready to leave at a moment's notice. "You ever think about leaving?" he asked. "Just walking away from all this?" "Every day." "But you don't." "No, I don't." Mara sat back down at the table. "My mother used to say that running doesn't change what you're running from. It just means you carry it with you wherever you go." "Your mother sounds smart." "She was, until my father killed her." Rafe went very still. "I didn't know." "Most people don't. It was a long time ago. I was 12. He came home drunk one night, angrier than usual. She said something he didn't like. He hit her so hard she never woke up." Mara traced a finger along the worn wood of the table. "I watched it happen. Stood there frozen, too scared to move, too small to stop him." "What happened to him?" "Nothing. The sheriff at the time, this was before Wickham, ruled it an accident, said she fell, hit her head. Everyone knew the truth, but no one said anything. That's just how things were. Women died and men got away with it, and life went on." "That's why you bought my bond. Why you stood up to Wickham." Mara nodded. "Because I watched a man get away with murder once. Watched everyone look the other way because it was easier than fighting. I swore I'd never do that again. Never be the person who stays silent. Even if it costs you everything? Especially then. What's the point of surviving if you lose yourself in the process?" Rafe pulled out the other chair and sat across from her. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you're stubborn." "Stubborn or stupid?" "Both, probably." He smiled slightly. "But the good kind." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the lamp burning low between them. Outside, Ashford slept, unaware of the battle still to come. A dog barked in the distance. Someone coughed. The normal sounds of night. "If the appeal goes through," Rafe said eventually, "if Wickham walks, we deal with it. How?" "I don't know yet, but we will." Mara looked at him. "You don't have to stay, you know. Your bond was for my protection, but I release you from it. You're free to go. Find somewhere safer." "Is that what you want?" "I want you to choose. Really choose. Not because you're legally bound or because you feel obligated." Rafe was quiet for a long time, studying his hands. "When I was standing on those gallows, rope around my neck, I'd given up. Accepted it. Figured maybe I deserved to die for all the ways I'd wasted my life. Then you stepped forward and I thought you were insane. Who saves a stranger? Who risks everything for someone they don't even know?" He looked up, meeting her eyes. "But you did. And these past months, working here, building something, I felt more alive than I have in years. I'm not leaving, not because of some legal bond. Because this is where I want to be, with you, fighting whatever comes next." Mara felt something shift in her chest. "All right then. Together. Together." The weeks crawled by like wounded animals. Mara threw herself into the store, restocking inventory, reaching out to suppliers who'd dropped her when word spread about her buying Rafe's bond. Some came back, curious about the woman who'd challenged Wickham. Others didn't, too afraid of association. Money was tight, tighter than it had been before, but she managed. Rafe proved invaluable, his quiet competence filling gaps she hadn't realized existed. He could fix almost anything, talk to almost anyone, and had a memory for numbers that made inventory tracking easier. The town slowly started to shift. News of the hearing had spread beyond Ashford, carried by Daniel Worth's articles and the gossip of travelers. People from neighboring towns came through, curious to see the woman who'd challenged a corrupt judge. Some bought things. Others just gawked and left without spending a cent. Mara hated the attention but used it. Every sale helped. Every coin in the register was a victory against the forces trying to bury her. A week before the appeal hearing, Tom Brennan stopped by with news. "There's talk at the saloon. Some men came through yesterday asking questions about you, where you live, who you associate with, whether you've got family." "What kind of men?" "The kind who get paid to ask questions, or paid to make problems go away." Tom's expression was grim. "I don't like it, Mara. Feels like a threat." "Everything's a threat these days." "Maybe. But this feels different. You should be careful. Real careful." That night, Rafe moved his bedroll to the floor of Mara's room. "Not leaving you alone," he said when she started to protest. "Not until this is done." I can take care of myself. I know, but you shouldn't have to. He unrolled the blanket, making a makeshift bed. Besides, you've saved my life twice now. Figure I owe you at least a good night's sleep. Mara wanted to argue, but exhaustion won. Thank you. Don't mention it. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Rafe's breathing even out as he fell asleep. The knife was under her pillow. The window was latched. The door was locked. But fear had a way of getting through any barrier. 3 days before the appeal hearing, the store was broken into. Mara arrived at dawn to find the front window smashed, inventory scattered, the cash register pried open and emptied. They hadn't taken much. There wasn't much to take, but the message was clear. We can get to you any time. Sheriff Garrett came to investigate, took notes, asked questions, but they both knew he'd never find who did it. These kinds of crimes went unsolved unless someone talked, and no one would. I can put a deputy outside at night, Garrett offered. For how long? A week? A month? Eventually you'll need him somewhere else, and we'll be back where we started. Then what do you want me to do? Catch Wickham's people, the ones doing this. I'm trying, Mara, but they're careful, and they've got resources I don't. After he left, Rafe and Mara cleaned up the mess in silence. Glass swept into piles. Inventory reorganized. The cash register, bent and broken, went into the trash. This is only going to get worse, Rafe said. I know. Maybe we should... Don't. Don't say we should leave. Don't say we should give up. I was going to say maybe we should fight back harder. Mara paused, holding a broom mid-sweep. How? I don't know yet. But sitting here waiting for the next attack, that's not fighting. That's just surviving. Surviving is fighting. Is it? Or is it just slow dying? The words stung because they were true. Mara had been in survival mode for so long she'd forgotten what actual fighting looked like. Forgotten that sometimes you had to take action instead of just reacting. What do you have in mind? She asked. We find out who's doing this. We follow the money, the connections. We expose them the same way we exposed Wickham. And if that gets us killed, at least we'll die swinging instead of cowering. Mara considered. It was risky, maybe reckless, but Rafe was right. Waiting for the next attack was just another kind of surrender. All right, she said. We fight back. They started that night. Rafe had connections from his drifting days, people who lived in the margins, who heard things, who traded information for coin or favor. He reached out quietly, asking questions about who'd been hired recently, who was taking money from outside sources. Mara talked to customers, reading between the lines of casual conversation. Who seemed nervous? Who asked too many questions? Who paid in cash when they usually ran tabs? It took 3 days, but they pieced together a name, Marcus Delane. A man who'd arrived in Ashford 2 weeks earlier, claiming to be a surveyor, but he didn't survey. Didn't work. Just drank at the saloon and asked questions. He's the one, Rafe said. Has to be. We need proof. Then let's get it. They followed Delane for 2 days, watching from a distance as he made rounds through town. He talked to the banker, the saloon owner, a few other men who'd been close to Wickham. Money changed hands. Envelopes passed back and forth. On the 3rd day, Delane left town riding south toward the capital. Rafe followed on horseback while Mara minded the store, stomach churning with worry. He returned after dark, muddy and exhausted. He met with Crane, Rafe said, Wickham's lawyer, handed over a package and got paid. I couldn't get close enough to hear what they said, but the connection's clear. So Crane's coordinating the harassment. Looks like it, and if we can prove it, we can get him disbarred, maybe even arrested. Big if. Yeah, but it's something. The appeal hearing was set for September 9th in the territorial capital. Mara and Rafe made the journey with Sheriff Garrett, this time traveling armed and alert. Tom Brennan came too, along with Mrs. Halloran and a few others from Ashford who wanted to see justice done. The capital felt different this time, colder, more hostile. Or maybe that was just Mara's fear coloring everything. They stayed in a cheap boarding house on the edge of town, 2 cramped rooms shared among 6 people. Privacy was a luxury they couldn't afford. The Territorial Supreme Court was housed in a building even more imposing than the courthouse. Marble columns, vaulted ceilings, Everything designed to make ordinary people feel small and insignificant. Mara and Rafe sat in the gallery while three judges in black robes listened to arguments. Crane stood at the podium, smooth and confident as ever. Your Honors, this case represents a fundamental miscarriage of justice. Judge Moresby showed clear bias against my client from the moment proceedings began. She allowed inadmissible testimony from convicted criminals. She made prejudicial statements from the bench. She rushed to judgment without proper consideration of evidence. He gestured to a stack of documents. I've provided transcripts showing numerous instances where Judge Moresby overstepped her bounds. This was not a fair hearing. It was a predetermined outcome designed to destroy an innocent man's reputation and career. Tolo stood for the prosecution, his response measured and firm. Your Honors, Judge Moresby followed proper procedure throughout these proceedings. The testimony she allowed was standard in cases involving accomplice witnesses. Her statements from the bench were appropriate clarifications of law, not expressions of bias. Mr. Crane is attempting to overturn a valid ruling because he doesn't like the outcome. The chief judge, a stern woman named Helena Voss, leaned forward. Mr. Tolle, the defense has raised concerns about the speed with which Judge Moresby reached her decision. Can you address that? The evidence was overwhelming, Your Honor. Multiple witnesses, documentary proof, a confession. Judge Moresby didn't rush to judgment. She recognized clear facts when presented to her. Or she had already decided the case before hearing it, Crane interjected. That's a serious accusation, Judge Voss said. Do you have proof of prejudgment? I have a pattern of behavior suggesting bias. Patterns aren't proof, Mr. Crane. The arguments went on for 3 hours, back and forth, technical and exhausting. Mara's head pounded by the time they recessed for the day. She stood outside the courthouse with Rafe, breathing in air that felt too thick. What do you think? She asked. I think it could go either way. That's not comforting. Wasn't meant to be, just honest. They walked back to the boarding house as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that reminded Mara of fire. She thought about the store back home, hoped it was still standing, hoped Jesse and the others she'd left in charge were managing. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Mara lay on the narrow bed staring at water stains on the ceiling, mind racing through every possible outcome. If they lost the appeal, Wickham would walk. If they won, there'd be a trial. More months of waiting, more opportunities for things to go wrong. Either way felt like losing. Around midnight, she heard voices outside. Low, urgent. She crept to the window and peered out. 2 men stood in the alley below, partially hidden by shadows. One handed the other an envelope. Money changed hands. Then they looked up, and Mara jerked back from the window. Had they seen her? She pressed against the wall, heart hammering, waiting. Footsteps on the stairs. Getting closer. Rafe, she whispered sharply. He was awake instantly, rolling to his feet, knife in hand. They waited in silence as the footsteps stopped outside their door. The doorknob rattled, someone testing whether it was locked. Rafe positioned himself by the door, ready. Mara grabbed her own knife, hands shaking but steady enough. Then the footsteps retreated. Down the stairs. Out into the night. They waited another hour before either of them moved. We need to leave, Rafe said. Find somewhere else to stay. Everywhere's dangerous. So we picked somewhere less dangerous. They packed quickly and left through the back, avoiding the main streets. Found another boarding house on the opposite side of town. Paid extra for a room with a lock that actually worked. We can't keep running like this, Mara said, sitting on the edge of the new bed. Then we end it, one way or another. The appeal hearing resumed the next morning. Mara and Rafe arrived early, taking seats near the back where they could watch the doors. Garrett sat with them, hand resting on his holstered gun. The judges called Tolle and Crane forward for final arguments. This court must consider not just the technical aspects of Judge Moresby's ruling, Crane said, but the broader implications. If we allow cases to proceed on such flimsy grounds based on testimony from criminals seeking deals, we undermine the entire justice system. My client deserves better. The territory deserves better. Tolle countered with precision. The defense wants this court to ignore overwhelming evidence because it's inconvenient. They want us to let our murderer walk free because proper procedure was followed, and they don't like the result. That's not justice. That's cowardice. Judge Voss cut in. Strong words, Mr. Tolley. Deserved words, Your Honor. Amos Wickham murdered a man to protect his corrupt dealings. The evidence is clear. The witnesses are credible. Judge Moresby was right to find sufficient cause for trial. Overturning her ruling would be a travesty. The judges conferred quietly among themselves. Then Voss addressed the courtroom. We'll take this matter under advisement and issue a ruling within 2 weeks. This hearing is adjourned. 2 more weeks. Mara felt the weight of them settle on her shoulders like stones. They stayed in the capital, unable to afford the journey back and forth. Spent their days walking the streets, avoiding crowds, watching for threats. Spent their nights in the cramped boarding house room, sleeping in shifts. On the 3rd day, Marcus Tolley found them at a small restaurant where they were eating lunch. "We need to talk," he said, sliding into the booth uninvited. "About what?" Mara asked. "About insurance, in case the ruling doesn't go our way." "What kind of insurance?" Tolley pulled out a folder. "I've been digging into Crane's background, found some interesting connections. He's represented several men accused of corruption, always seems to get them off. And he's got a pattern of witness intimidation that we might be able to use." "How does that help us?" "If we can prove Crane's been coordinating harassment against you, breaking into your store, sending threats, we can get him disbarred, maybe arrested. Even if Wickham walks on the murder charge, we can destroy his legal defense." Mara glanced at Rafe, who nodded slightly. "We already suspected Crane was involved. We followed one of his men, Marcus Delane." "Delane?" Tolley's eyes sharpened. "He's the surveyor? That's what he claims. But he's really an enforcer. Takes money to intimidate witnesses, destroy evidence, whatever needs doing. Can you prove it?" "We saw him meet with Crane, saw money change hands. Testimony alone won't cut it. We need documents, letters, something concrete." "Then we'll get it," Rafe said. That night, they broke into Delane's room at the saloon where he was staying. It was risky, probably stupid, but they were running out of options. Rafe picked the lock while Mara kept watch in the hallway. Inside, the room was neat, almost sterile. No personal effects, just a trunk and a bed and a small table. Rafe opened the trunk carefully, sorting through clothes and supplies until he found what they were looking for. A leather portfolio stuffed with papers. Letters from Crane detailing payments. Instructions for intimidating witnesses. A list of targets that included Mara's name, Rafe's name, even Sheriff Garrett. "This is it," Rafe whispered. "This proves everything." They copied what they could by lamplight, Mara's hand cramping as she wrote fast. When they heard footsteps in the hallway, they froze. The footsteps passed, kept going. They finished and put everything back exactly as they'd found it, then slipped out into the night. Back at their boarding house, they showed Tolley the copies. He read through them with growing satisfaction. "This is good, really good. We can use this to bury Crane. Will it help with the appeal?" "Maybe, maybe not. But it gives us leverage, and sometimes that's enough." The ruling came down on September 17th, delivered by messenger to their boarding house. Mara's hand shook as she broke the seal and read. The Territorial Supreme Court had upheld Judge Moresby's decision. Crane's appeal was denied. The case would proceed to trial. Furthermore, the court was launching an investigation into Silas Crane's conduct based on evidence of witness intimidation and obstruction of justice. Mara read it 3 times to make sure she understood correctly. Then she handed it to Rafe, unable to speak. "We won," he said, voice thick with disbelief. "We actually won. We won." They didn't celebrate, didn't shout or dance or do any of the things Mara had imagined she might do if this moment came. They just stood there in the cheap boarding house room, holding the letter, feeling the weight of it. "Now what?" Rafe asked eventually. "Now we go home, and we prepare for the real trial. Think it'll be enough to convict him?" "It has to be." The journey back to Ashford felt different this time, lighter, like they were traveling downhill instead of climbing. The landscape looked less harsh, the sky wider. Or maybe Mara had changed. Maybe she'd stopped seeing everything as a threat and started seeing possibility instead. Ashford greeted them with surprising warmth. Jesse ran out to meet the wagon, practically bouncing with excitement. "You're back! We kept everything running just like you said. No problems. Well, one problem. Mrs. Chen's daughter tried to buy whiskey, but I told her no, and she got mad, but I stood firm. Jesse, Mara interrupted gently, breathe. He gulped air, grinning. Sorry, just glad you're back. The store was exactly as they'd left it, maybe cleaner. Jesse had organized the inventory, swept daily, even repaired a wobbly shelf. The kid had done good. Thank you, Mara said, meaning it. You're getting a raise. Really? Really? You earned it. Over the next few weeks, life settled into something resembling routine. The appeal victory had shifted the town's attitude noticeably. More customers came back. People who'd been sitting on the fence decided it was safe to associate with Mara again. Money started flowing, slowly but steadily. Sheriff Garrett stopped by with news about Crane. He's been disbarred pending investigation. His license is suspended. Can't practice law anywhere in the territory. Good, Mara said. Better than good. Without him, Wickham's lost his best defense. They'll assign a public defender, but it won't be the same. When's the trial? October 15th. You'll be called to testify again. Mara nodded. She'd expected this, prepared for it. But knowing and experiencing were different things. The weeks crawled toward October. Mara testified at Crane's disciplinary hearing, laying out everything, the break-in, the threats, Delane's role. The disciplinary board listened with grim expressions and recommended criminal charges. Crane was arrested on October 1st. The news spread through Ashford like wildfire. People who'd stayed silent before started talking, sharing their own stories of intimidation and threats. The dam had broken. October 15th arrived cold and gray, the kind of day that promised rain. Mara and Rafe made the journey to the capital for what felt like the 100th time, this time with a larger group from Ashford. Tom, Mrs. Halloran, Sheriff Garrett, even Judge Chen came to show support. The trial took place in the same courthouse where Moresby had ruled. Different judge this time, a man named Blackwood, with a reputation for being fair but harsh. The jury was selected over 2 days, 12 people from across the territory who swore they could be impartial. Mara watched them during selection, trying to read faces. Who would believe the evidence? Who would side with power regardless of truth? The trial began on October 20th. Tolley presented his case methodically, building layer upon layer. The documents from Sam's metal box, the financial records linking Wickham to Pike and Dalton, witness testimony from townspeople who'd been threatened or intimidated. Pike testified again, looking frailer than before, but his story remained consistent. Wickham ordered us to kill Sam Greer, said he was becoming a problem, said we had to make it look like a robbery. Dalton cut his throat while I held him down. Wickham watched and told us we'd done good work. Dalton testified too, having finally taken a deal after Crane's arrest left him without protection. His account matched Pike's exactly. 2 men, both guilty, both pointing at the same third man who'd given the orders. I didn't want to do it, Dalton said, voice barely above a whisper. But Wickham had power. Said if we didn't help, he'd make our lives hell. Said we'd hang anyway if we refused. So you killed an innocent man to save yourselves? Tolley pressed. Yeah, that's what we did. Caleb testified about Sam's fears, his documentation, his plans to expose Wickham. Sheriff Garrett testified about the rushed trial, the pressure to execute Rafe quickly, the way evidence had been mishandled. And then Mara testified. She walked to the stand on shaking legs, was sworn in, and sat. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled, people standing along the walls. She could feel their eyes on her, judging, weighing, deciding. Tolley approached with his usual calm. Miss Vance, please tell the court why you bought Rafe Calder's bond. Because I didn't believe he killed Sam Greer. Based on what? Based on knowing both men. Sam wouldn't have been killed by someone like Rafe, a drifter passing through. Sam's murder was planned, calculated, and the timing was too convenient. 3 days before he could testify against Wickham, he's dead and a convenient scapegoat is arrested. So you investigated? Yes. Despite the danger? Because of the danger. If Wickham could kill Sam and frame Rafe, he could do it to anyone. The whole town was at his mercy. And what did you find? Mara detailed everything. Finding the documents at Caleb's farm, discovering the buttons at Sam's cabin, overhearing Pike and Dalton talking, the town meeting where Pike confessed. She spoke clearly, steadily, refusing to let her voice shake even when Wickham stared at her with pure hatred. Wickham's new lawyer, a nervous public defender named Sims, tried his best during cross-examination. "Miss Vance, isn't it true that you had a personal grudge against Judge Wickham?" "No. He'd ruled against you in a property dispute 3 years ago." "That's true. But this isn't about that. This is about murder. Or is it about revenge? A chance to destroy the man who embarrassed you?" "I was embarrassed when I lost that dispute. But I moved on. This is different. This is about justice for Sam Greer. Justice or vengeance? Justice. Sam deserved better than to be murdered and forgotten." Sims tried a few more angles but gained no traction. When Mara stepped down, she felt drained but steady. She told the truth. That was all she could do. Rafe testified next, recounting his experience, the arrest, the rushed trial, the certainty that he'd hang for something he didn't do. "I thought I was going to die that day, and I'd accepted it. Then Miss Vance stepped forward, and I thought she was crazy. But she gave me something I hadn't had in years, a reason to fight." The prosecution rested after a week of testimony. The defense put up a weak case, character witnesses who spoke about Wickham's service to the community but couldn't refute the evidence. Sims tried to argue reasonable doubt, but it rang hollow against the mountain of proof. Wickham didn't testify this time. Sims had advised against it, probably remembering how poorly it had gone before. So Wickham just sat there, stone-faced, watching his life unravel. Closing arguments came on November 1st. Tolley stood before the jury and spoke for nearly an hour, connecting every piece of evidence into a damning narrative. Amos Wickham is guilty of murder. The evidence proves it beyond any doubt. 2 accomplices have confessed. Documents show motive. The timeline shows opportunity. And his actions afterward, rushing the execution, intimidating witnesses, show consciousness of guilt. You must find him guilty. Sims made a half-hearted attempt at defense, arguing that the witnesses were unreliable, that the documents could be interpreted differently, but even he seemed unconvinced by his own words. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Mara waited in a side room with Rafe, unable to eat, unable to think about anything else. This was it, the moment that determined everything. At 4 o'clock, the bailiff called them back. The jury had reached a verdict. The courtroom was silent as the jury foreman stood, paper trembling in his hands. Judge Blackwood looked at him expectantly. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" "We have, Your Honor." "On the charge of murder in the first degree, how do you find?" The foreman cleared his throat. "We find the defendant guilty." The courtroom erupted. Shouts, gasps, the scrape of benches as people surged to their feet. Wickham roared something incoherent, lunging toward the jury before guards restrained him. His face was purple with rage, veins standing out on his forehead. "Order!" Blackwood's gavel cracked like gunfire. "Order in this court!" It took 5 minutes for quiet to return. Wickham was forced back into his seat, still struggling against the guard's grip. Blackwood's expression was granite. "Amos Wickham, you have been found guilty by a jury of your peers of murder in the first degree. The sentence for this crime in this territory is death by hanging. You will be executed on November 20th, 1873. Do you have anything to say?" Wickham spat toward the judge's bench. "This is a farce, a conspiracy. You're all corrupt, every one of you. I'll appeal. I'll fight this until you've exhausted your appeals, Mr. Wickham. This verdict is final." Blackwood banged his gavel one last time. "This court is adjourned." They dragged Wickham from the courtroom, his screams echoing even after the doors closed. Mara sat frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Guilty. He'd been found guilty. Would hang. Rafe's hand found hers. "It's over." "Is it?" "Yeah, it is." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Daniel Worth pushed through the crowd toward Mara. "Miss Vance, how does it feel to know justice has been served?" Mara looked at him, exhausted beyond words. "It feels necessary. Not good. Not satisfying, just necessary." "What will you do now?" "Go home. Try to live." "You're a hero to many people." "I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who refused to look away. She pushed past him, done with questions, done with attention. They left the capital the next morning. The journey home felt surreal, like waking from a long dream. Mara kept expecting something else to go wrong, another threat to emerge. But nothing did. Just miles of open country and the slow return to normal. Ashford welcomed them back with something approaching celebration. Not a parade, but people gathered in the street outside the store, clapping as the wagon rolled in. Tom and Mrs. Halloran were there, Sheriff Garrett, Judge Chen. Even the banker showed up, looking uncomfortable but present. Jesse ran forward, grinning ear to ear. "You did it! Everyone's talking about it! You brought down Wickham!" "We all did," Mara said, climbing down from the wagon. "Everyone who testified. Everyone who stood up." But she knew that wasn't quite true. She'd started it, made the choice that began everything, and she'd carry that weight, good and bad, for the rest of her life. The store needed work. Weeks of absence had taken a toll, dust everywhere, some inventory gone stale, repairs Jesse hadn't been able to handle alone. Mara and Rafe threw themselves into it, working from dawn until late at night. The rhythm of physical labor was healing, sweeping floors, stocking shelves, fixing broken things. Small, concrete tasks that had clear beginnings and endings, unlike the tangled mess of the past year. On November 20th, word reached Ashford that Amos Wickham had been hanged at dawn. Sheriff Garrett delivered the news personally, watching Mara's face for a reaction. "How do you feel?" he asked. Mara thought about it honestly. Relieved and sad. Sad that it had to come to this, that a man who could have done good chose corruption instead. Sad for everyone hurt along the way. But not sorry. No, not sorry. He made his choices. We all did. That night, Mara walked to Sam Greer's grave alone. The cemetery was quiet, wind whispering through dried grass. Someone, probably Caleb, had left fresh flowers on the wooden cross. "It's done," Mara said quietly. "Wickham's dead. Your murder's been answered. I hope that matters, wherever you are. I hope you know we fought for you." The wind carried her words away. No response came because none could. The dead stayed silent, and the living had to find their own peace. She stood there until full dark, then walked back to town feeling lighter than she had in months. Winter came early that year, bringing snow in mid-November. Ashford huddled against the cold, smoke rising from chimneys, people hurrying from building to building. The store stayed busy, folks needed supplies, and Mara's had become the place to shop. She hired more help. Jesse's younger sister Anna came on to handle customer service. A boy named Marcus, whose family had lost everything in a fire, started helping with inventory. Rafe managed repairs and expansion, building additions to handle increased stock. The store was thriving in ways Mara had never imagined possible. Not rich, but stable, growing, becoming something permanent. On Christmas Eve, Mara closed early and invited everyone back to the small apartment above the store. Jesse and Anna, Marcus, Tom Brennan, Mrs. Halloran, Sheriff Garrett, Judge Chen. They crowded into the space that had once felt cramped, but now felt full. Mara cooked what she could: beans, cornbread, a chicken Tom had brought. Nothing fancy. But it was theirs, and that made it special. "To surviving," Rafe said, raising a tin cup of weak cider. "To surviving," everyone echoed. They ate and talked late into the night, sharing stories, laughing at small jokes. For a few hours, the darkness of the past year faded, replaced by something warmer. Community. Belonging. After everyone left, Mara and Rafe cleaned up in comfortable silence. She washed dishes while he dried, their movements synchronized from months of working together. "This is good," Rafe said eventually. "This life we're building." "Yeah, it is." "Think it'll last?" "Nothing lasts forever, but we can make it count while it's here." "I can live with that." They finished cleaning and sat by the stove, warming themselves against the December cold. Outside, Ashford slept under a blanket of snow, the town quiet and peaceful. "Your bond officially expired 2 weeks ago," Mara said. "You know that, right?" "I know." "So you're free to go, any time." Rafe looked at her, firelight reflecting in his eyes. "And go where?" "This is home. Your home. I'm not walking away from that." "Even knowing what it cost?" What we went through? Especially because of that. We built this together. From nothing. From worse than nothing. And I'm not giving it up. Mara felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them back. All right then. Partners? Partners. Rafe extended his hand and they shook, sealing something that went beyond business or legal bonds. A choice to stand together against whatever came next. The new year brought changes. Judge Chen implemented more reforms. Fair elections for town council, transparent budgets, regular audits of public funds. The things that should have been standard but hadn't been under Wickham's rule. Ashford grumbled about the changes, but adapted. People got used to having a say in how things ran, got used to leaders who actually served instead of just taking. In February, Daniel Worth published a book about the case, Justice in Ashford, One Woman's Fight Against Corruption. He sent Mara a copy with an inscription, to the woman who proved that courage doesn't require a badge or a title, just a choice. Mara read it once, then put it on a shelf in the back office. It was accurate enough, if overly dramatic. But it wasn't the whole story. Books never were. The real story was in the daily work. Jesse learning to read beyond basic letters, because Mara took time to teach him. Anna standing up to a customer who tried to cheat her, remembering what Mara had said about knowing your worth. Marcus saving his wages to help his family rebuild. The real story was in the farmers who paid their debts, even when it meant sacrifice, because trust was a currency too. In the townspeople who slowly started believing that things could be different. In the small victories that added up to something larger. Spring arrived with wildflowers and warmer winds. Mara expanded the store again, adding a section for farm equipment and another for women's goods, fabric, thread, buttons. Things people needed but had been traveling to other towns to buy. Business boomed. She hired 2 more people, bought a second wagon for deliveries, opened an account with suppliers in the capital who'd heard about her and wanted to do business. The store that had been failing a year ago was now the most successful in 3 counties. You ever think about expanding further? Rafe asked one evening as they closed up. Opening a second location? Sometimes, but I don't want to spread too thin. Rather do one thing well than 2 things poorly. That's probably smart. Besides, I like it here. Like being part of this place. Even after everything? Especially after everything. We changed this town. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough that it matters. On April 10th, 1 year to the day since she'd bought Rafe's bond, Mara and Rafe walked to the cemetery where Sam Greer was buried. Caleb had come down from his farm for the occasion, bringing a proper stone marker to replace the wooden cross. The 3 of them stood there as the marker was set, simple granite with Sam's name, dates, and a single line. He stood for truth. Thank you, Caleb said, shaking both their hands, for making sure he didn't die for nothing. He didn't, Mara said. His courage started all of this. No, your courage did. He just gave you a reason. After Caleb left, Mara and Rafe lingered. The cemetery was peaceful, wind whispering through new grass. Wildflowers were starting to bloom, purple and yellow dots of color against the green. You ever regret it? Rafe asked. Buying my bond? Starting all this? Mara thought about the question seriously. The fear, the threats, the night she'd been certain they wouldn't survive, the price she'd paid in reputation, money, peace of mind. No, she said finally. I don't. Not even a little? Not even a little. It was the right thing to do. And it brought me here. Brought us here. I wouldn't trade that. Me neither. They walked back to town as the sun climbed higher, warming the earth after winter's cold. Ashford spread out before them, rough, unfinished, struggling. But underneath was something different now, something that hadn't been there before. Hope, real hope. The kind that came from knowing that truth could win, that courage mattered, that one person standing up could inspire others to do the same. It wouldn't last forever. Nothing did. There would be other challenges, other injustices, other battles to fight. But for now, in this moment, it was enough. Summer came hot and dry, bringing its own challenges. A drought threatened crops, and Mara extended credit to farmers who couldn't pay, trusting they'd make good when harvest came. Some did, some didn't. But she kept the store open, kept serving people, kept building. In July, a traveling photographer came through town offering to take portraits. On a whim, Mara and Rafe sat for one together. The resulting photograph showed two people side by side, weathered, serious, but unmistakably alive. Mara framed it and hung it in the store's office, a reminder of how far they'd come. August brought a surprise visitor, Marcus Tolle, stopping through on his way to another case. He looked older, more tired, but pleased when he saw what Mara had built. "You've done well," he said, looking around the busy store. "Better than well. Thanks to you, you built the case that got Wickham convicted. I built the case, but you gave me the pieces. None of this happens without your courage. Or your skill." They talked for an hour, catching up on what had happened since the trial. Crane had been convicted of obstruction of justice and was serving 3 years. Dalton had been sentenced to 20 years for accessory to murder. Pike had gotten 15 with possibility of parole after 10 for his cooperation. "And you?" Tolle asked. "Any plans beyond running the store?" "This is enough, more than enough." "I believe that. But if you ever want to do more, testify in other cases, help other towns deal with corruption, let me know. You have a voice people will listen to." Mara considered. "Maybe someday. For now, I'm good where I am." On September 10th, 1 year since the Supreme Court upheld Moresby's ruling, the town held a remembrance ceremony for Sam Greer. Not a funeral, since that had already happened, but a recognition of what his courage had started. People gathered at the cemetery as Judge Chen spoke about standing up for truth even when it cost everything. About how one person's integrity could inspire a whole community. About how change came not from waiting for heroes, but from ordinary people choosing to act. Mara stood in the back, uncomfortable with the attention, but present because it mattered. Sam deserved to be remembered, deserved to have his death mean something. Afterward, people came up to thank her. Some awkwardly, some warmly. She accepted each acknowledgement with grace, understanding that for many, this was their way of apologizing for not standing with her sooner. "It's all right," she told Mrs. Henderson, who'd avoided the store for months after Mara bought Rafe's bond. "We all do what we can when we can. Still, I should have been braver. You're here now, that's what matters." Fall arrived with cooler temperatures and the promise of harvest. The farmers who'd bought on credit started paying back, some in cash, others in goods. Mara accepted both, knowing that survival meant flexibility. The store continued to thrive. Rafe had become indispensable, not just as a worker, but as a partner in every sense. They split profits evenly, made decisions together, argued about inventory and expansion, and when to take risks. It felt right, balanced. On October 1st, they made it official. Rafe's name was added to the deed, and the sign was repainted to read, "Vance and Calder General Goods." Jesse and the others threw a small celebration, cake from the bakery, decorations made from spare fabric. Nothing elaborate, but heartfelt. "To partnership," Tom Brennan said, raising a glass. "To partnership," everyone echoed. Mara looked around at the faces gathered in her store, people she'd fought for, fought with, built alongside. A year ago, she'd been alone, struggling, invisible. Now she had community, family, in a way that transcended blood. November brought cold winds and the first snow. Mara and Rafe spent evenings by the stove in the apartment above the store, playing cards, reading, talking about plans for the next year. "What do you want?" Rafe asked one night. "If you could have anything." Mara thought about it. "This, what we have right now, maybe a little more security, but mostly this." "That's it? You don't want to be famous, rich, powerful?" "I've seen what power does to people, seen what chasing it costs. This is better, building something real with people I trust. Even knowing it might not last, especially knowing that, makes it more precious." Rafe nodded slowly. "Yeah, I can understand that." They sat in comfortable silence, the wind howling outside, but the room warm and safe. This was what Mara had fought for. Not glory or recognition, just the chance to build a life worth living. December brought the holidays and another gathering, this time bigger, almost 30 people crammed into the apartment and spilling down into the closed store. Food appeared from everywhere, dishes people brought to share, the kind of abundance that came from community. Mara stood back, watching everyone talk and laugh, feeling a contentment she'd never known before. This was home. These were her people. And nothing, not Wickham, not fear, not all the obstacles they'd faced, had been able to destroy it. You did this, Rafe said, appearing beside her with 2 cups of cider. We did this. No, you started it. I just followed along. You did more than follow. Maybe. But it was your courage that made the difference. Mara accepted the cider, took a sip. Then let's call it ours. Together. Together. As the new year approached, Mara found herself thinking about the future for the first time in years. Not just surviving day to day, but actually planning, dreaming. She wanted to expand the store's literacy program, teaching more kids to read. Wanted to start a lending library so people could borrow books they couldn't afford to buy. Wanted to help other women start businesses, sharing what she'd learned. Small dreams, maybe. But hers. On New Year's Eve, she and Rafe stood on the porch of the store, watching Ashford celebrate with bonfires and music. The town looked beautiful in the firelight, alive with possibility. What do you think the next year brings? Rafe asked. I don't know, but I'm not scared of it anymore. No? No, whatever comes, we'll handle it, together. Yeah, we will. The bells rang midnight, and Ashford erupted in cheers. A new year, a new beginning. The past would always be there, the struggles, the losses, the scars. But it didn't define them anymore. Mara Vance had bought a man's life on a gallows and ended up buying her own freedom, had stood up to power and discovered her own strength, had risked everything and found that she had more to lose and more to gain than she'd ever imagined. The store stood solid beneath her feet, the town spread out before her, and beside her stood a partner she trusted with her life. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever was. But it was real. It was earned. And it was enough, more than enough. It was everything.